Meet our protagonist, Kim Yoonji. She's a 26-year-old woman with a rather intriguing job. She's a rented girlfriend for different men, which means she steps into the role of a temporary romantic partner. In her line of work, Yoonji has uncovered a fascinating array of reasons why men seek her services. One significant motivator is the pressure they feel when they need to show up at family gatherings or events with a significant other. They don't have a girlfriend, so they hire Yoonji to play the part. But that's not the only motivation she's discovered. Another intriguing reason is the desire to flaunt their social status among their peers. You know, the guys who want to make a splash at gatherings with their attractive, charming date. That's where Yoonji steps in. Currently, she's on a date as a hired girlfriend, accompanying a guy named Dushik. However, things are far from smooth sailing. Dushik's friends, who are part of this outing, seem to have some doubts about their relationship. The atmosphere becomes uncomfortable for Yoonji, and she attempts to cover it up with nervous laughter. But here's where it gets interesting. Dushik leans in and urges Yoonji to up her game, to be more convincing. He even hints at potential consequences if she doesn't comply. It's not just talk. He takes a bottle, smashes it, and uses it to emphasize the point. He asserts that his friends are clueless about the depth of their supposed love. This dramatic action leaves Yoonji feeling apprehensive and questioning Dushik's intentions. Under pressure, Dushik, feeling the heat from his skeptical friends, tells Yoonji to amp up the PDA to convince them. Yoonji, not quite thrilled, decides to play along by giving him an unexpected face lick. It's the most she's willing to do. Fast forward to after his buddies have left. Dushik's clearly not impressed with Yoonji's performance. He takes this moment to remind her that he's the one footing the bill, hinting that their whole deal is purely transactional. Things take a turn as he pokes her head and attacks her character. He even stoops to comparing her to a street hustler who's just out for an easy buck, essentially saying she's all looks and no substance. Then, for added drama, Dushik dramatically flings money from his wallet at Yoonji. He tells her to take the money and hit the road. Yoonji picks up the cash from the floor, counts it to make sure it's all there, and takes a moment to realize she just scored easy money today with minimal effort. Now, she's thinking about splurging on some fish-shaped pastries, finding comfort in small pleasures to ease her current situation. At her age, Yoonji's wrestling with the whole concept of youth and aging, dubbing it the age of limbo. Once she's back home, she announces her arrival to the empty space, prepares for a soothing shower, and does some phone scrolling. She's got her sights set on living in one of those swanky Seagrill apartments, whether she gets there by marrying a loaded partner or raking in the big bucks herself. As she scrolls through social media, Yoonji can't help but feel a bit down. Her friends seem to be living the high life, and her former crush is hitting new heights of success. It's clear she's battling some feelings of inadequacy. In an effort to boost her spirits, she gives herself a pep talk. She reminds herself of her hard work and diligent savings. Plus, she takes comfort in the fact that she gets to savor some delicious meals during her dates with these guys. It's all part of her plan to eventually snag that Seagrill apartment's dream. Just as she's lost in thought, her phone chimes with a notification. It's a message from a new client, Moon Sung-hyun. Yoonji's pleasantly surprised to find that he's an attractive guy. But she's been around the block and knows that good looks can sometimes hide quirky personalities. She figures that if a good-looking dude is looking for a rented girlfriend, there's probably more to the story. She recalls a past experience with a client who turned out to be quite creepy, so now, she decides to play it smart. Yoonji engages Sung-hyun in a chat first, making sure he seems normal before jumping into anything. After some back and forth, they hit it off and finally agree to move forward. Fast forward a few days, and it's the day of the big date. Yoonji gets herself ready to meet her new client, Moon Sung-hyun. When they finally meet in person, she's pleasantly surprised. He's even more good-looking up close. He comes off as a straightforward guy who prefers fewer words. As they get together, he gently reminds her of their act. They're supposed to be a couple for the day. Then, he takes the wheel and drives them to their destination. Along the way, Yoonji starts to notice familiar surroundings, and it dawns on her that they're headed to Seagrill Apartments, a place she's always dreamed of. Curiosity gets the best of her, and she casually asks if they're going to a restaurant in that area. He confirms, and she comments on how posh it is, which doesn't seem to faze him, hinting at his wealth. When they step out of the car, Sung-hyun reveals the name of the restaurant, Venice. Yoonji, surprisingly, knows all about it, even its location, which catches him off guard. He asks her how she's so familiar with it, and she nonchalantly explains her fascination with Seagrill apartments. He reminds her once more of their little charade, that she needs to act like his girlfriend, which sends shivers down her spine. Finally, they arrive at the restaurant, and they're met by a woman who starts questioning Sung-hyun about their relationship. She's clearly not thrilled that he brought a new girlfriend despite her request. He defends himself, saying he's only following her instructions, bringing his new girlfriend because she wanted to meet her. The lady, still doubtful, wonders how he managed to find a new girlfriend so quickly. To prove his point, Sung-hyun takes Yoonji's hand and declares her as the love of his life, the one he truly cares for. Strangely, Yoonji feels a strange warmth, perhaps from his touch, even though she knows it's not appropriate to feel this way about a client. Finally, the lady decides to leave, saying that just looking at Sung-hyun's face ruins her appetite. She stands, wishes him a good life, and makes her exit. It's revealed that this lady is actually Sung-hyun's ex-girlfriend, adding a surprising twist to the evening. Everything that just went down leaves Yoonji totally speechless. It's all a bit much to take in, so she decides to make a quick escape to the bathroom. As she's hustling down the hall, her mind can't help but spin with thoughts about her current situation inside Seagrill apartments. It's like a pinch-me moment. She can hardly believe she's actually in the building. But here's where things take a twist. Yoonji accidentally bumps into another girl along the way. What's even more shocking is that this girl recognizes her as Luna from the 130th floor. Shocking, right? See, she had been fibbing about how well she knew Seagrill apartments. Sure, she'd seen videos and stuff, but it turns out the reason Yoonji knows the place inside out is because she used to live there herself, until just a year ago. Turns out, our protagonist, Yoonji used to have a pretty affluent lifestyle and the means to call this fancy building her home. Yoonji's mind quickly rewinds to her middle school days when she lived the high life. The girl she bumped into starts asking about Luna, wondering where she's been. Yoonji is pretty sure the girl hasn't caught wind of any rumors about her yet. She explains that her family ran into some financial troubles, and they had to scatter in different directions. Yoonji changed her phone number, ghosted on social media, and it's been a whole year since then, but moving back to Seagrill apartments has been a no-go so far. The girl extends a friendly invitation to catch up over a meal, given they haven't seen each other in ages. But Yoonji feels a bit uneasy about it and politely turns down the offer before making a quick exit. Back at her own table, she spots her client still looking down in the dumps and tearing up. She had come over to let him know their time was up, but seeing him so broken, she couldn't just bail like that. This was a different kind of sight for her, a man in tears. Yoonji's concern gets the best of her, so she asks him how he's doing, trying to reassure him that he'll find someone better. But he stays silent, not saying a word in response. Thinking her presence isn't helping, she slips him her business card, telling him to reach out if he needs anything, and says her goodbyes. But as she's about to take off, he grabs her hand and pleads with her to stay. He's even willing to pay for more time. Yoonji explains that she's got another client lined up after him, and his offer won't work. That's when he spills the beans. He lives in Seagrill apartments, specifically on the 130th floor. He's moved into her old place. Hearing this, Yoonji figures it might be meant to be her spot. She agrees, and together, they head for the elevator, ready to see where this twist of fate might lead them. As they arrive at their destination, Sung-hyun offers her a drink, but Yoonji's thoughts are somewhere else entirely. She's lost in contemplation, thinking about how little has changed since she moved out of this apartment a year ago. She's noticing that everything seems frozen in time, right down to the furniture that hasn't budged. He hands her a glass, and she takes slow sips, her gaze drifting to a painting she'd made for her mother. Right next to it, there's a stain on the carpet, a lingering reminder of a time when she accidentally spilled a drink intended for her mom. Sung-hyun realizes this impromptu visit might be a bit odd, and he apologizes for bringing her here like this. He reassures her that his behavior today is the exception, not the rule. After a few rounds of wine, their connection intensifies. Sensing the escalating moment, Sung-hyun decides it's time to freshen up. Meanwhile, Yoonji ponders the nature of this whole arrangement, designed to reacquaint her with the apartment's familiar surroundings. While he's in the shower, Yoonji starts checking out the place. She stumbles upon a set of knives and even picks one up, briefly entertaining the idea of using it to regain control of the house. But deep down, she knows she can't go through with something so drastic. It dawns on her that her mental state might be taking a toll. She reminds herself about her upcoming psychiatric appointment, scheduled for the next day. When he finally steps out of the bathroom, fully dressed, Yoonji's a bit perplexed by his sudden change in behavior. She wonders if he's gotten shy all of a sudden. She suggests they head back to the bedroom, but he seems hesitant about continuing their activities for the day. Still, she persists. However, his enthusiasm seems to have waned, and he appears less interested. He brings up the fact that he has her contact info from her card and promises to get in touch. Eventually, she decides it's time to leave his place. Back at her own home, Yoonji takes her prescribed medications, which helps her emotional state. She can't shake the feeling that someone else is now living in the house she used to call home. What baffles her is that this person hasn't made any changes to the place or its furnishings. It's a confusing situation, and she starts thinking about reaching out to her mother for some insights. As she contemplates her predicament, she makes a resolve. She's determined to turn Sung-hyun into her boyfriend. She believes this is the key to regaining ownership of the house, and she's willing to do whatever it takes. The next day rolls around, and Yoonji heads off to see her psychiatrist, a routine she's kept up for the past year, to deal with her depression and other issues. Once she's there, the psychiatrist asks about her recent experiences from the week. She opens up about a disturbing thought that crossed her mind, where she imagined using a knife to solve her problems by harming someone. She admits that these impulsive thoughts are getting more intense as time goes on. On top of that, she's got some new info about the house she used to live in when she was well off. Turns out, one of her clients is now living there. This discovery got her thinking about taking drastic actions to get her former home back. The psychiatrist digs deeper, wondering if her desire to harm this man is tied to her strong longing to return to that house. She confirms the connection and even outlines a plan to turn the guy into her boyfriend to reclaim the place. The psychiatrist points out that her eagerness to reach this goal might be pushing her toward extreme measures and advises against fixating on a single idea. In response, she defends herself, saying she's not solely obsessed with the idea and acknowledges that there must be other ways to regain her house, like boosting her income. Sometimes, she struggles to fully grasp the doctor's words, but because she has a soft spot for him, she puts in the effort to understand his advice. As she leaves his office, she decides to give her mother a call to discuss Seagreal Apartments. She wants to know if their belongings with seizure stickers were taken along with their house. Her mother confirms that the new tenant took all their stuff because it was valuable and in almost new condition. Curious about the new tenants, she asks her mother if she knows who they are, but her mother is in the dark due to the situation with their belongings being seized. Yoonji clarifies that her question was fueled by curiosity and ends the call. Suddenly, she remembers that Sung-hyun hasn't reached out yet. Impatience creeps in, and she blames herself for not getting his contact info or insisting on spending more time together that night. Her phone unexpectedly chirps with a notification: a new client, and to her surprise, it's none other than her own doctor, Yoo Ha-sung. She blinks in disbelief for a moment, not quite expecting this turn of events. He's proposing a meeting for tomorrow, which is a bit unexpected. This idea starts sparking curiosity in her mind. The thought of her doctor becoming a client makes her wonder if their professional relationship might turn into something more personal. Just when she's digesting this, her phone rings again, displaying an unfamiliar number. She hesitates for a second but decides to pick up. It's Sung-hyun on the other end, and he's eager to meet at Seagreal Apartments the next day at 6. The funny thing is, that's the exact same time her doctor suggested for their meetup. She tries to throw an alternative time idea at Sung-hyun, suggesting they meet a bit earlier, but he's adamant, insisting it's gotta be 6 o'clock sharp. He ends the call, leaving her slightly befuddled. Feeling the urgency in his tone, she speedily types out a text to Sung-hyun, explaining that she's got other plans during that time. But this guy doesn't back down. He's all about sticking to that specific hour and even dangles extra money in front of her as a sweetener if she agrees. This bold move catches her off guard, making her wonder if he thinks she's just all about the money. So, she tells him she needs some time to think it over, still trying to process this unexpected twist. While she's dead set on finding a way to keep her house, she can't help but be a tad puzzled by her increasingly close connection with her doctor. Memories flood in, like the time she saved her mom from a financial crisis-induced suicide attempt. Ever since then, she's been on edge about her mom's well-being. As all these thoughts whirl in her head, she finally gets a response from Sung-hyun, all eager and ready to meet up the next day. It's the next day, and she's en route to meet up with Sung-hyun. With a specific goal in mind, she's got some protection in her bag, ready for the possibility of getting intimate. It's all part of her strategy to try and win back the house she once shared with her mother. She recalls some advice she's been given about how emotions can get pretty tangled up when you mix business with pleasure. So she's trying to stay level-headed and not get too carried away in the quest for affection. Sung-hyun sends her the address for their meetup, and to her surprise, it's his own home address. This choice of location makes Yoonji think that Sung-hyun might be feeling a bit daring today. She even imagines him all decked out in a robe with some bottles of alcohol. But when she gets to the 130th floor, she discovers Sung-hyun in a sharp suit with neatly slicked back hair. This attire doesn't exactly match up with her earlier expectations. He tells her to change into some designer clothes he's already bought for her, which makes her wonder about the expenses he's racking up for these items. As they chat, he comments on her eyes and suggests that she take out any contact lenses she might be wearing. She firmly insists that her blue eyes are the real deal, a feature she's pretty proud of. But Sung-hyun isn't buying it. He asks for black contact lenses, expressing his doubts about the authenticity of her blue eyes. He just can't believe they're real. Then, he explains that they're about to meet his uncle and stresses the need for a formal appearance. He's worried his uncle might think she's wearing contacts, despite her naturally beautiful blue eyes. So, as they arrive at their destination, she reluctantly pops in the black contact lenses, even though they make her eyes feel dry and irritated. Sung-hyun spills the beans that they're supposed to act like they're engaged, just another day on the job for her. This revelation crushes Yoonji's expectations, making her realize that her hopes might have been built up in vain. They finally arrive at the meeting venue, which turns out to be the VIP room at Sanrio Restaurant on the 89th floor. As the door swings open, Sung-hyun's uncle steps inside. Both Yoonji and Sung-hyun rise from their seats with warm smiles to greet him, and he kindly offers them chairs to sit down. The conversation kicks off with his uncle asking Sung-hyun about his plans for engagement and the life he envisions ahead. He expresses some regret for giving his nephew a lecture even before they've had a chance to eat, hoping that Sung-hyun takes his words to heart because he genuinely means what he's saying. Yoonji can't help but wonder why his uncle is starting off the meeting in such an off-putting tone. They've barely settled in, and his uncle's manner is already a bit insulting. In response, Sung-hyun addresses his uncle's concerns, acknowledging that rebuilding trust might take time but emphasizing his commitment to proving he's responsible and dependable. His uncle smirks playfully and shifts his focus to Yoonji. He questions whether she's truly okay with marrying someone like Sung-hyun. A little puzzled by his choice of words, Yoonji lets out a chuckle and reassures him that she's perfectly fine with it, emphasizing the strength of their love. While observing Yoonji, his uncle suddenly has a moment of realization. Her appearance reminds him of Chairman Kim's daughter, but he dismisses the thought because the person he's thinking of has blue eyes, a feature Yoonji doesn't share at the moment due to the contact lenses. Nevertheless, there's something about her that doesn't quite sit right with him. With a decisive tone, he decides there's no need to prolong their meeting. He acknowledges Sung-hyun's commitment to the engagement and states that they don't need to meet face-to-face for minor discussions. With that, he gets up from his chair and takes his leave for the time being. So, they head back to the 130th floor of the building. Sung-hyun, feeling a bit weary, decides to pour himself a drink, his movements reflecting a mix of annoyance and disappointment. His tie quickly comes off, and he runs his hands through his hair, showing his frustration. Watching his actions, Yoonji picks up on his mood and casually suggests she could change out of the expensive outfit he got for her. But he pleads with her not to leave again, his tone filled with genuine emotion. Yoonji, on her part, sees this as an opportunity she's been waiting for, and given the circumstances, she agrees to stay with him. After all, in her view, a couple of shared drinks between two people who've already shared a kiss shouldn't be a big deal. As the evening rolls on and they sip their drinks, and as you might have guessed, things begin to get heated. While he gazes at her, a memory from his past involving his parents flashes through his mind, casting a shadow on the romantic moment they were sharing. He pulls her into an embrace and apologizes for not being able to continue, taking her off guard and leaving her a bit annoyed. She begins to wonder if Sung Hyun might be dealing with some physical problems. Inwardly, he wrestles with the decision not to be intimate with her without revealing his secret. He apologizes once more, acknowledging that he's taken up her time without making progress. Yoonji, not willing to let this opportunity slip away, tries to move closer to him, but suddenly he pulls away, stating that it's enough. This leaves her questioning whether he has any dislike towards her. However, he chooses to avoid the question by deciding to call a taxi for her. Eventually, the taxi arrives. Just before leaving, she encourages him to reach out to her whenever he needs her. When she arrives home, Yoonji is overwhelmed with emotion and begins to cry. Alone with her thoughts, she reflects that her fluctuating emotions might be related to her depression. She questions if she truly is unappealing. Continuing to ponder the issue, especially since she considers herself an above-average woman with good looks and a great physique, she has an epiphany. She starts to believe that her value is limited to being a girlfriend for hire, suspecting that this is the reason behind her tears. Back in the day, Yoonji lived life on her terms, enjoying the freedom to do the bare minimum while still having a significant amount of money. But all that changed when her family hit a rough patch financially, and life became a struggle. It made her realize that maybe her looks were her only real asset. Now, in the present, she reaches out to her ex-partner, Taehoon, confessing that she misses him. To her surprise, he responds with a positive note, agreeing to come over, because he's been feeling lonely himself. Currently, Yoonji is still on the phone with her ex-partner. He's asking her if she's up for some fun and wonders if she's moved past phrases like "I'm not ready," because if those hesitations are still there, he won't come over. He adds that she should know what every guy desires by now. In response, Yoonji firmly states that she has no intention of doing anything with him. He then retorts, suggesting that she should go back to the psychiatric clinic she seems to have affection for and seek more treatment. After this comment, he abruptly ends the call. From Yoonji's perspective, his current behavior stems from some unresolved issues between them. She recalls how she turned down his advances towards the end of their relationship, which led to intense arguments and ultimately their breakup. Yet, at this moment, she finds herself upset over another guy's lack of interest in pursuing a relationship with her. Yoonji feels regret, wishing she had chosen to meet up with her psychiatrist instead. She realizes that she's regretting her choices without any valid reason. As her ex-partner suggested, Yoonji has leaned heavily on her psychiatrist for a significant amount of time. However, she acknowledges the unfortunate reality that her psychiatrist views her solely as a regular patient, nothing more. Reflecting on a year ago, she contemplates her mental well-being. This disorder explains why she found herself standing there, attentively listening to individuals trying to recruit her into their religious beliefs. During this period, as she absorbed their words, an overwhelming number of voices filled her mind, all carrying distressing thoughts about ending her life. In the following scene, Yoonji pays a visit to her doctor. During the appointment, she shares with him the deep sense of foreboding she's been feeling, believing that her life might come to an end this week. She wants her doctor to know that she's not just uttering empty words, she genuinely means what she's saying. She's determined to convey the gravity of her emotions. The doctor, in response, reassures her of his support during this challenging time. He asks whether she's been diligent in taking all her prescribed medications over the past week. In her thoughts, Yoonji feels thankful for her psychiatrist, a consistent source of comfort whenever she needs to pour out her feelings. She notices his hands moving swiftly as he jots something down, sparking her curiosity about the contents of his notes. Alongside her admiration for how he holds his pen, she recognizes a fondness for him growing within her. The doctor suggests increasing her dosage and advises her to stick to the prescribed regimen more diligently this time. Despite his recommendations, Yoonji chooses not to follow his advice, firmly believing that the medications won't truly make a difference for her. However, as weeks pass and changes continue to unfold, the doctor remains a steadfast presence by her side. As time goes by, Yoonji's feelings start to evolve, and she begins to anticipate these appointments with her doctor. Amidst the shifting circumstances of her life, her doctor remains a constant support, leading her to genuinely value his presence. Yoonji begins to question the nature of her feelings towards the doctor, pondering why she perceives him not only as a medical professional, but also as a man. Swiftly, she reminds herself of their roles: he's her doctor, and she's his patient. She grabs her phone, contemplating whether to call Sung-hyun, although they've recently gone their separate ways. She decides to send him a message to let him know she's back home safe. Surprisingly, he answers the call, and she starts by sharing her concern about the possibility of never seeing each other again. Sung-hyun, on the other end, tries to alleviate her worries, assuring her that it's not as dire as she thinks. He hints at having something important to discuss face-to-face, but admits struggling to find the courage to do so. He then takes a deep breath, mustering the words to reveal a secret. He confides in her, confessing that he had committed a crime in the past, his voice heavy with unease. With a trembling tone, he asks if she would still be willing to hear him out. Hearing the news, she rushes to meet him and notices he seems visibly unwell. Holding his clammy hands, they walk indoors together. He appears somewhat embarrassed by their reunion under such circumstances, expressing concern that she might think he's foolish and self-centered. However, she reassures him, expressing her gratitude for his openness. She tells him that she's glad he's finally sharing this with her, and he responds with heartfelt thanks, admitting that he's wrestled with the idea of how to tell her countless times. Finally, he gathers the courage to reveal the truth: he ended the life of his father. He goes on to recount the painful story of how his father's excessive drinking had led him to harm his mother. In an attempt to protect his mother, he had no choice but to intervene, resulting in his father's injury. While his actions were in self-defense and protection, legally, it was considered manslaughter. He was sentenced to a year and a month in prison but was released early on parole, wearing an electronic ankle monitor. Concerned for his mother, Yoonji inquires about her fate. Sadly, he shares the devastating news that his father had inflicted irreparable harm upon her, and she had passed away. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Yoonji seizes the moment and offers to spend the night with Sung-hyun. And things get intimate. As their connection deepens, she asks him to call her Luna, revealing it to be her real name. Exhausted, he eventually drifts off to sleep. Yoonji, however, finds herself unable to sleep just yet. She contemplates whether this signifies the beginning of a relationship between them. Her musings are interrupted as he draws closer to her, wondering why she's not resting. Just then, Sung-hyun's phone vibrates, indicating an incoming call from his uncle. He answers the call, sounding puzzled about the late-hour interruption. His uncle, seemingly agitated, comments on Sung-hyun's noticeable activity, despite wearing an electronic monitor. The conversation takes an unexpected turn when his uncle mentions being aware of Sung-hyun's recent visit to a lawyer. Sung-hyun, in a guarded manner, mentions it was a personal consultation. His uncle's tone grows increasingly frustrated, and he questions Sung-hyun's intentions. He issues a warning, expressing his reluctance for Sung-hyun to associate with Yoonji any longer if this behavior continues. Confused, Sung-hyun presses his uncle for an explanation, but all he receives is a vague mention of having a bad feeling about Yoonji. Yoonji wakes up in the morning, her mind buzzing with curiosity about Sung-hyun's whereabouts. Being back in Seagreal Apartments after a considerable time apart fills her with a unique sense of anticipation. As she lies there, lost in thought, Sung-hyun re-enters the room, his presence instantly drawing her attention. With a warm smile, she greets him and dives right into the pressing question of where they stand in their relationship now. But to her surprise, her inquiry is met with silence, leaving her in an uncertain limbo. Sung-hyun attempts to ease the tension by assuring her that he'll reach out later. He conveys his reluctance to end their interaction on such uncertain terms. Yoonji's frustration bubbles up as she starts to doubt her appeal in his eyes. She can't help but wonder if he sees her as easily replaceable, someone without any substantial significance in his life. The realization that she allowed herself to envision a future with him adds to her disappointment. Unable to contain her swirling emotions, she makes a quick decision to leave his place, denying him an opportunity to respond. Her departure is marked by a vow never to return to his apartment. She's determined to regain her place in Seagreal Apartments through her own financial efforts. Amidst her tears, her words are tinged with self-directed anger and a profound sense of letdown. Later on, she is headed to the psychiatric clinic even though she has no planned appointment for the day. Bursting into her doctor's office, she urgently requests him to stay with her through the night, sharing it's her only wish. The doctor inquires about her troubles, and she explains that she had an encounter with the client she had previously mentioned, but he rejected her afterward. Despite the doctor's attempts to console her, she remains inconsolable. Fast forward to the next week. She is at home when a rent payment reminder pops up, and having paid her dues, she's left with no funds. Faced with this financial predicament, she contemplates returning to work. Unexpectedly, her phone is flooded with notifications from clients due to her week-long absence. After some contemplation, she makes up her mind to meet with a client named Haru. Upon meeting him, she introduces herself, and he promptly begins to gather his belongings, indicating their readiness to leave. During this interaction, she notices a tattoo on his body, sparking curiosity about whether he might have a connection to game-related activities. As they stroll along, Haru surprises her by asking if he can hold her hand. He casually remarks, "You don't have to hold my hand if you don't want to." Curious about their destination, she wonders if they're meeting someone else, perhaps even a date, considering how well-dressed he appears. She can't help but think he must have numerous female friends, given his fashionable appearance. Eventually, they arrive at a restaurant, place their orders, and engage in conversation while waiting for their meals. It starts with the usual questions, like her age and her profession, which she answers. Then he delves deeper, asking why she chose this line of work, and this particular question takes her by surprise. Tears unexpectedly well up in her eyes as she struggles to answer. Seeing her emotional response, he quickly apologizes for posing such a peculiar question. In response, she explains that her primary motivation is the money. As they continue chatting, they find themselves at another restaurant, ordering yet more food. She can't help but wonder why he asked such a thought-provoking question. Right as he's about to provide an answer, she interrupts him, suggesting he drops the formal Miss Yunji and opts for Nuna instead. She finds his demeanor cute and can't help but wonder if her own little brother might have been similar if she had one. A thought that triggers memories of her older brother in America, whom she hasn't been in contact with for a long time. Noticing that she's consumed a fair amount of alcohol during their conversation, he compliments her, remarking that she seems to become more beautiful each time he looks at her. Their conversation continues as they walk together after leaving the restaurant. He musters the courage to ask if they can meet again and nervously requests her phone number, all while pleading with her not to turn him down. Later that day, when Hira arrives home, he's engaged in a call with a friend. This friend begins using derogatory language to describe Yunji, but he swiftly intervenes, warning his friend and even going as far as threatening physical harm if he continues to speak disrespectfully about her. Meanwhile, Yunji is lying in bed, contemplating whether she should have had more to drink earlier in the evening. Sleep eludes her as thoughts of her recent encounter with Sung Hyun continue to swirl in her mind. Suddenly, her phone buzzes with a notification from a new client, and to her surprise, it's none other than Dr. Yu again. She takes her time getting ready for their meeting scheduled for today. As she makes her way to meet him, she's struck by the sight of Dr. Yu dressed casually, which is a departure from his usual professional attire. Approaching him, she introduces herself as his girlfriend for the day. Yunji works for a company specializing in companionship services, where employees have access to information about clients. However, clients don't see the faces of the employees during their selections. This means Dr. Yu had no idea Yunji was the one who would attend to him. When he realizes she's his date, he attempts to cancel the request, expressing discomfort with dating a patient. In a bid to convince him to stay, Yunji questions his reason for seeking the services of a girlfriend for hire and expresses her desire to be of help to him. This catches the doctor off guard, and after a moment's pause, he suggests they go for coffee, a proposition Yunji readily accepts. She's left puzzled by how she has unexpectedly found herself entering Dr. Yu's personal life. They settle in a restaurant, discussing menu choices while conversing about Yoonji's previous life of privilege. Suddenly, the doctor's phone rings, and he excuses himself to take the call. While waiting for him, Yoonji overhears someone at a nearby table talking about a similar experience she had earlier. Turning around discreetly, she's astonished to discover that it's Sunghyun's uncle from their previous date. From the fragments she overhears, Yoonji begins to suspect that Sunghyun's rejection might not have stemmed from dislike but rather hints at the possibility of stronger feelings he may have for her. Dr. Yu returns to their meeting spot after his phone call, only to discover that Yoonji has left, leaving behind a note expressing her apologies. Eager to make things right, she rushes over to Sunghyun's house, where he's been pondering her visit even before she arrives. With a hint of uncertainty, Yoonji wonders if he will open the door for her, fearing he might already be weary of her presence. The door makes a soft clicking sound as Sunghyun opens it, and he warmly welcomes her inside with hugs, and they share an intimate moment. As Sunghyun heads off to freshen up, Yoonji finds herself alone in the room. She takes this opportunity to approach a painting she had once created for her mom, which now hangs on the wall. While she gazes at the artwork, Sunghyun returns to the room, curious about what she's doing with the painting. Yoonji's heart races as Sunghyun inquires about the painting, causing her to fear that her secret has been uncovered briefly. However, it turns out he's simply curious about the artwork. He comments on it, noting that it might appear amateurish but admitting it brings him joy every time he looks at it. This is why he's never taken it down. With an air of vulnerability, he confides in Yoonji, revealing that when he told her he couldn't be her boyfriend, it wasn't due to a lack of affection for her. It was because his uncle had forbidden him from seeing her any longer. Yoonji, surprised yet understanding, admits that she was already aware of the situation. Apparently, Sunghyun's uncle had proudly boasted about it at a cafe and even issued threats against her. Sunghyun expresses his heartfelt apologies for subjecting her to such distressing information. In response, Yoonji shares her own regret that their relationship can't continue as openly as they'd like because of these circumstances. However, she remains determined to pursue it despite the obstacles. With a sense of urgency, she implores Sunghyun to continue meeting with her secretly, regardless of the risks posed by his uncle's threats. After a thoughtful pause, they both agree to maintain a discreet relationship. They established his apartment on the 130th floor of Seagreal Apartments as their meeting point. Yoonji is willing to do whatever it takes to achieve her goals while navigating this complex and shallow relationship. In the present moment, Yoonji starts to notice a delightful aroma wafting through the air, piquing her curiosity. Intrigued, she heads to the kitchen and is pleasantly surprised to find Sunghyun cooking. It catches her off guard because she didn't expect him to possess culinary skills. With curiosity piqued, she can't help but ask about the cooking, and he responds kindly, instructing her to take a seat at the dining table and assuring her that he'll bring the meal to her once it's ready. Yoonji quickly prepares herself and then settles down at the table, eager to engage in conversation. Wanting to keep the dialogue flowing, she asks him about his plans for the day, and he mentions his work commitment, having to check in at 9 o'clock. As the meal is served, she expresses her gratitude for the delicious food and bids him farewell for the time being. Afterward, she boards a bus to head home, content with the unexpected culinary surprise. However, her peaceful journey is abruptly interrupted when she receives an urgent message from her workplace. To her surprise, it's from Seo Haru, who proposes a meet-up for the following day. Yoonji hesitates, contemplating politely declining because she has recently reconnected with Sunghyun. Despite her reservations, Seo Haru insists, claiming to have a compelling reason this time and even tempting her with the promise of another delightful meal. Eventually, Yoonji concedes and agrees to the meeting. Upon returning home, she unexpectedly encounters Taehoon inside her house. He suggests they go to her room, hinting at the continuation of their conversation or other activities. Yoonji's mind drifts back to a memory from 8 months ago, involving her ex-boyfriend, Taehoon. She remembers the time when they dreamt of living together in a house, a place filled with cherished moments from their past. It was during this time that Taehoon introduced Yoonji to an intriguing idea, becoming a girlfriend for hire. His motivation behind this was to ensure she had a job and didn't face financial struggles. Back in the present, in Yoonji's house, Taehoon reveals a car key, explaining that he recently closed a significant business deal and upgraded his car. He then mentions that he wants to take a shower, but Yoonji feels somewhat uncomfortable with the idea. She suggests that he should shower at his own place, but Taehoon is already headed into the bathroom, not waiting for her to finish her sentence. A little while later, Taehoon unexpectedly emerges from the bathroom and asks Yoonji if she has any spare pants he could borrow. She hands him a pair, and he proceeds to lie down on the bed. Surprised by his actions, she lets him know she has no intentions of doing anything with him. In response, Taehoon mentions that he avoids getting involved with girls who are already in relationships. He reaches out and takes her hand, and asks her about her current relationship. Then, in a rather bold move, Taehoon attempts to initiate an intimate connection with Yoonji. However, Yoonji, determined and resolute, firmly but gently pushes his advances away, making it clear again that she has no desire to have anything to do with him. Taehoon's expression shifts into a sly grin, and he playfully questions if she's still holding back from pursuing romantic relationships, prodding her about her current involvement with someone else. Her reply is unwavering and affirmative, assuring him that she is indeed in a committed relationship with someone far superior to him, underlining the fact that her current partner resides in the coveted Seagreal apartments. Taehoon, unfazed by her response, offers his perspective. He suggests that Yoonji is dwelling in the past, fixated on her previous successes, and seemingly unwilling to embrace her future. He hints that his visit to her place has been an unproductive endeavor. With a casual comment about trying his hand at writing, he opens the door, causing it to emit a creaking sound, and makes his exit, leaving Yoonji to her thoughts. Now left to her own devices, and feeling somewhat bored, she decides to pass the time by indulging in some social media scrolling. As she navigates through her digital feed, a particular news article grabs her attention. It reports on the closure of a makeup company, a revelation that takes her aback. To her shock, she discovers that the makeup company in question was none other than her mother's business, a piece of information that hits her unexpectedly. Shortly after absorbing this unexpected news about her mother's company, her phone springs to life with an incoming call. The caller is none other than Sung Hyun, checking in on her well-being and extending an invitation for a movie date, injecting a new spark into her day. The scene then cuts to Seo Haru, who we find immersed in a creative pursuit, brainstorming ideas for his webcomic. He's in the zone, exploring various storylines in his mind when a message notification disrupts his thoughts. It's a message from Yoonji, indicating that she's en route to meet him. When Yoonji arrives, they exchange warm greetings. However, Haru is immediately struck by her beauty. In his eyes, she appears almost angelic, and her presence leaves a lasting impression. Eager to make the most of their time together, he suggests a change of location, and they embark on a new destination. They find themselves in a studio, and it's here that Haru unveils his identity as an artist. He confesses his artistic struggles, particularly when it comes to capturing the natural movements of people in his drawings. He admits that initially, he merely wanted to go on a date with Yoonji, but had to come up with an excuse to avoid seeming too forward. With a touch of uncertainty, Haru proposes the idea of sketching Yoonji, emphasizing that it's entirely optional and can be postponed to another time if she's uncomfortable. Yoonji, intrigued and willing, accepts the offer and expresses her curiosity about the final sketch. After diligently completing the sketch, Haru nervously presents it to Yoonji, unsure of its quality. To his astonishment, she finds the portrait exceptional and graciously thanks him for capturing her beauty so accurately. Yoonji, in turn, insists on returning the favor by sketching Haru, who is taken aback by her artistic skills. He compliments her talent, and she modestly mentions that she's a bit out of practice due to the passage of time. In a playful manner, Haru teases her, suggesting he might use her sketch as his phone wallpaper. As their meeting draws to a close, Yoonji realizes it's time for her to conclude her work-related tasks. She prepares to leave, but just as she's about to depart, Haru mentions that they still have one more minute to spend together. He contemplates how to make the most of this fleeting moment, and he plucks up the courage to ask Yoonji if he can give her a hug. She agrees to the gesture, and for a brief moment they share an embrace. However, in keeping with the time frame, Yoonji gently reminds him that their 1-minute moment has come to an end. After sharing that brief hug with Haru, Yoonji finds herself grappling with a mixture of peculiar emotions. Deciding to brush aside these feelings for now, she swiftly bids Haru farewell and takes her leave. Switching gears to another part of the story, Yoonji reconnects with Sung-hyun for their planned movie date. As they settle into the theater seats, she can't help but dwell on her dislike for romantic films. She acknowledges that she's only there because it's something Sung-hyun enjoys. Lost in these thoughts, she momentarily forgets the film playing on the screen. However, in this moment of distraction, Sung-hyun turns his gaze toward her, and their eyes meet. Something about his expression strikes her as endearing, and she starts to perceive a cute side to him. Feeling a bit disconnected from the movie, she leans in towards Sung-hyun and suggests that perhaps they should leave since she's not finding it enjoyable. Agreeing with her assessment, they decide to change their plans and head to a nearby motel. Inside the motel room, Yoonji offers Sung-hyun a drink to unwind. She senses a hint of unease in him, but despite that, she proceeds to hand him the drink. However, in an unexpected twist, she accidentally spills some of it onto his shirt, creating a small mess. In a rush, she searches for tissues to rectify her mistake. While she's occupied with cleaning up the spill, Sung-hyun decides it's an opportune time to freshen up by heading to the bathroom for a shower. Surprisingly, Yoonji insists on joining him, which leads to an intimate moment. As they prepare to settle down for the night, Yoonji expresses a desire for something to drink. Sung-hyun obligingly retrieves a drink for her, and as he hands it over, she notices a hickey on his neck. She immediately apologizes for it, a hint of self-consciousness in her tone. In response, Sung-hyun suggests covering it up with makeup, although he admits he doesn't have any makeup on hand. Yoonji offers her own makeup to assist in the situation. As he takes her makeup, Sung-hyun notices the brand and begins to wonder if this brand of makeup is connected to the reason his uncle advised him to stop seeing her. This thought lingers in his mind momentarily before he turns back to Yoonji with a different question, asking if she has lived in Seagreal apartments before. She responds by stating that she didn't live there, and curiously asks why he's inquiring. Sung-hyun, however, deflects her question, explaining that he just had a hunch and didn't really have a specific reason for asking. Yoonji senses that pressing further might risk exposing something, so she decides to let the matter drop. She offers to lend him some makeup because she has more at home, but he politely declines, concerned that she might feel embarrassed if he reveals that he runs a cosmetic company. However, he has a change of heart and accepts the makeup later on. As they drive home, Sung-hyun expresses his fatigue and suggests that Yoonji go to bed early when she gets home. Sung-hyun then asks about her typical daily routine, and Yoonji explains that she works and tries to rest whenever possible. He raises the topic of her job as a girlfriend for hire and questions if she can quit, but she firmly refuses, revealing her financial struggles and her hand-to-mouth existence. She acknowledges the social stigma associated with her work, but explains that she feels trapped with no better options. However, she expresses gratitude for her job because it led to her meeting him. Sung-hyun interprets this as a sign that she values him more than herself. Upon arriving at Yoonji's house, Sung-hyun drops her off and bids her farewell. She begins walking toward her home but pauses, turning back to give him a kiss before finally entering her house. Meanwhile, Sung-hyun reflects on his emotions. He can't deny that it's becoming increasingly difficult to hide his feelings for Yoonji. The next day at work, Sung-hyun enjoys popularity among his employees, thanks to his fair and flexible management style. While he used to face criticism due to his privileged background, his outstanding performance as the vice president has silenced many skeptics. While in his office, a colleague informs him about a meeting scheduled with the chairman, hinting at his uncle's impending visit. Alone in his office, Sung-hyun retrieves the makeup Yoonji had lent him. He begins to ponder whether he jumped to conclusions by connecting Yoonji to the makeup brand based solely on one product. He hopes that his concerns about the situation are unfounded. Sung-hyun's uncle arrives at the office, seeking a meeting with Sung-hyun. However, he's initially informed that Sung-hyun is in a meeting. After some time, the vice president steps out and invites the uncle into his office. The uncle expresses his dissatisfaction with the decision made by Sung-hyun's grandfather, finding it absurd that he appointed someone who took a person's life as the vice president. He's perplexed by this choice and is determined to prevent Sung-hyun from becoming the president. In response, Sung-hyun calmly tells his uncle that he's content with his current position and declines the offer to become the president. He explains that their conversation isn't work-related and excuses himself from the discussion. As he departs, his uncle's anger boils over, and he curses at Sung-hyun. Leaving the office, the uncle reflects on his sinister plan to eliminate any obstacles in his path, even if it means going up against his own father. Shockingly, it's revealed that the uncle was the one responsible for taking the life of Sung-hyun's father and framing him for the crime in some manner. In another scene, Yoonji has an appointment to see her doctor today, and she's feeling anxious because this is her first visit to the doctor since their awkward date during their last encounter. She's concerned about how he will react and whether he'll choose to pretend nothing happened between them. She reminds herself to act maturely. Upon entering his office, Yoonji immediately starts apologizing for her behavior during their previous encounter. Surprisingly, the doctor doesn't appear upset at all. He reassures her, saying it's alright and that she likely had a valid reason for her hasty departure. He also admits that he felt uncomfortable going to a cafe with her because, as her psychiatrist, it wasn't appropriate. However, he realized later that he had made a mistake. Yoonji is taken aback by his response, but continues to listen attentively. He goes on to confess that he erred by attempting to buy an emotional connection with money. Although Yoonji initially interprets this as a criticism of her job, he quickly comforts her by saying that she has immense potential and is still young enough to pursue any path she desires. Curious about his motivations, Yoonji asks why he sought the services of a girlfriend for hire in the first place. After some hesitation, he opens up about his personal struggle. His father is seriously ill and desires to witness his son's marriage before his time runs out. This is the reason he hired a girlfriend for hire to take wedding photos. Yoonji, feeling guilty for her abrupt departure on their previous date, offers to assist him by taking the photos together. She emphasizes that she's not making this offer as part of her job but because she genuinely likes him as a person. Dr. Yu expresses his gratitude for Yoonji's offer and requests some time to consider it. Yoonji readily agrees, and he thanks her once more before scheduling her next appointment. As she walks away, she can't help but hope that the doctor will accept her offer, as it would make her feel like a good person. Moreover, she's excited about the possibility that the doctor might start to like her more. Suddenly, someone taps her on the shoulder from behind and inquires if she's Hoyoung's girlfriend. At first, she's puzzled, but then she recalls a rude customer from a while ago. The man who stopped her explains that Hoyoung frequently compliments her, even though he believes she's too good for him. He remains skeptical when she claims not to know Hoyoung and accuses her of lying. He continues to harass her until Haru happens to pass by and intervenes. Haru advises her that if anyone harasses her like this again, she should simply give them a kick. Yoonji expresses her gratitude to Haru for coming to her rescue and asks about the nearby academy he mentioned. Slightly embarrassed, Haru eventually admits that he attends an academy for webtoon art and production. They decide to grab coffee together. While at the cafe, their conversation shifts to the topic of college education. Haru shares that he never had any intention of working for a company and even got a visible tattoo to express this sentiment. Yoonji inquires about his dreams, prompting Haru to open up about his aspiration to become a webtoon artist. He shares many details about himself, including his decision to go against his parents' wishes for him to become a civil servant or a salaryman. He explains that he skipped college to prepare for 2 years to pursue a career as a webtoon artist but made no progress, leading to conflicts with his parents. Yoonji asks Haru if he contacted her for inspiration, and he quickly apologizes, clarifying that he didn't mean to offend her. She reassures him, mentioning that the only thing that truly offended her was the guy who harassed her earlier. They delve deeper into Haru's webtoon stories, and Yoonji offers to assist him in drafting a story after seeing a sample of his work. Haru informs Yoonji that the webtoon is rated 19+, causing her to stare at him as she says it's not like they're little kids, and they both know what it means. Meanwhile, Haru thinks she is putting things nicely just to make him feel better, but he wonders how he's supposed to tell her that it is about an elf and a demon lord. Feeling awkward, she thinks she shouldn't have offered to help, so she tells him that if it's too embarrassing for him, he can draw based on what she writes for him because she has a story in mind. He hopes she is not looking down on webtoon because coming up with a story is really hard. But she assures him that she's not. Then she asks if he wants to see the story she jotted down on her phone and then passes her phone to him. Looking at it, he realizes that Yoonji is more talented than he is. He even calls her a master storyteller. He is so shocked because he didn't expect this at all, and he has been working on this for 2 years. She asks him what he thinks about her story, and he says it's really good, so she tells him that she'll polish it up so that it's suitable for a webtoon. She asks for his phone to give him her personal number and says that if they are going to work on this together, they should know each other's numbers. Haru still can't believe that she is giving him her number. He thinks there's no need to feel discouraged. He wonders if this could possibly lead to a fling and then a relationship, or he might end up drawing a webtoon about his delusions. After their meeting, he says he should get to his academy class now, so he bows and leaves her. Yoonji feels great and hopes this means she'll be able to make a living without being a girlfriend for hire. Thinking about it, she recalls how she started out as a wedding guest for hire. Then one day, the head of the company asked her if she was interested in working as a girlfriend for hire instead since she's pretty, which she agreed to. The reason was something her ex, Taehoon, said, but she reminds herself not to dwell on negative thoughts and considers giving Sunghyun a call. She calls and informs him that she's reaching out because she wants him to be the first to know. She mentions that she has been practicing her story writing skills for a while now. She tells him that she's considering writing a story for a webtoon, and this time, it's for real. Surprised by the news, he asks if this means she won't have to continue working as a girlfriend for hire, and she confirms that. He responds even more enthusiastically than Yoonji expected. He suggests they celebrate, and she agrees. Then, he asks if she needs anything for her writing, assuring her not to feel pressured to say yes. She reveals that she needs a place to write and asks if she can work in his study. She confesses that she only asked this because she wants to be close to Sigriel, but he goes silent. Finally, he permits her to do her work in his study and suggests she drop by today to take a look. She expresses her surprise at his positive response, and he tells her he truly wants her to become a writer. He also asks to see her work later. After the call, she inwardly admits that everything is going so smoothly that it's making her anxious, and she wonders if something bad will happen. Nevertheless, she insists on enjoying the celebration. Later that day, she goes to Sigriel to meet with Sunghyun. She brings along a bottle of wine, not wanting to come empty-handed. Suddenly, she remembers that she still hasn't picked up her purse from his place, and says she plans to do so today. The arrangement is to meet him in the lobby, and then head up together. However, he unexpectedly calls out her name and asks if what she's holding is a bottle of wine. He offers to carry it for her. As they head to his apartment, a voice calls out her name, and she immediately recalls that her gut instincts about bad feelings have always been accurate, even since she was little. She turns around and sees her old friend, Suyeon. Noticing the way they greeted each other, Sunghyun asks if they know each other. But before Yoonji can respond, Suyeon interrupts and tells Yoonji that she doesn't live there anymore and questions why she keeps lingering around, calling her pathetic. Burning with anger, Yoonji confronts Suyeon, her voice shaking with emotion as she asks if Suyeon just referred to her as pathetic. In a burst of frustration, she yells at Suyeon, asserting that her family may have faced financial difficulties, but that does not justify hearing such harsh words from her. This is what Yoonji longs to express to Suyeon. However, she knows that if Sunghyun discovers her previous residence at Sigriel Apartments, he'll uncover the lie she's been keeping from him. So, she exercises caution. With a fake smile, she mentions she's here to meet someone and introduces Sunghyun as her boyfriend. She fervently hopes that he will play along with her act. To her surprise, he complies, affirming Yoonji's statement. Startled by this unexpected revelation, Suyeon inquires, "Don't you live on the 130th floor, by any chance?" Sunghyun nods, confirming his residence. Then she apologizes and admits she had no idea Yoonji's boyfriend lived here. She pleads for a chance to catch up over a meal since she even turned her down the last time they had tried to meet. Yoonji, even though she has no intention of going out for a meal with her, assures Suyeon that they will make plans some other time. They exchange numbers, and Suyeon walks away. As Yoonji reflects on the encounter, she realizes that this isn't the first time Suyeon has taken an offensive stance towards her. Suyeon has always struggled with an inferiority complex in her presence. Living on the 121st floor, Suyeon may have harbored jealousy, knowing that Yoonji resided on the top floor. After all, in the high-rise hierarchy, the higher the floor, the more significant and expensive the apartments become. So, it's possible that Suyeon had been waiting for an opportunity to assert herself in this matter. In addition, Yoonji has a nagging feeling that the residents of the building will soon begin to gossip about her because of this interaction with Suyeon. If this proves true, it could limit her ability to visit Sunghyun's place as frequently as she'd like. Sunghyun interrupts her thoughts by asking if they should talk upstairs, and she agrees. As they ascend the stairs, she wonders about what to say and how to explain herself. Upon entering, he inquires about her well-being, as her friend was quite rude to her. She responds, suggesting that her friend may have been in a bad mood. Then, he asks if it's true that she used to live in Seagrill apartments before she moved, but she instantly denies it. She explains that Suyeon is a friend from high school, and many of her friends used to live in Seagrill apartments, so she used to visit frequently. She adds that she moved afterward and hasn't been in the area since. Sunghyun seems to believe her but questions whether it's wrong to visit a friend. He still feels it wasn't nice of Suyeon to say such things. In an attempt to help, he hands her a key card for his unit in Seagrill apartments, telling her to let her friend know that she now lives there. He reminds her that he allowed her to use his study, but she appears quite surprised and starts fidgeting. Staring at the card, she inwardly reflects on how long it took her to touch it again, and she's sure her mom and big brother are still having a hard time. She thanks Sunghyun and immediately starts crying, and he hugs her to console her. Later, she wakes up on his bed, realizing that she fell asleep after crying her eyes out. He comes over to the bed and things begin to get intimate, but she pauses, reminding him that she brought a bottle of wine. As they continue, Yoonji makes a bold suggestion which causes Sunghyun to rise abruptly. After a brief pause, he curiously inquires why she suggested this, and she promptly explains that it's her safe day. He, however, firmly believes there's no such thing, fearing the possibility of an unintended mishap. Some minutes later, we find Yoonji taking a shower while thinking about what she said to Sunghyun earlier, because he probably feels anxious already. She tells herself that she should be happy that he gave her access to Seagrill apartments, and expecting any more from him at this point would be insane. Meanwhile, Sunghyun, who is seated on the bed, remembers that he needs to give Yoonji her purse back. As he extracts the purse, he hears her voice from the bathroom, asking where he keeps his towels. In a rush to fetch one for her, the purse slips from his grasp, revealing its secrets. He reaches for the purse to repack everything, and just then, she steps out of the shower, announcing that she found the towel on her own. He stands up with a confused expression, holding up the protection he found in her purse. Apparently, these are the same ones she intentionally pierced when they first met. Sunghyun turns to Yoonji with a concerned look and asks if she is planning to use it, but Yoonji quickly denies it, explaining that things aren't as they seem. However, he presses for the truth, leaving her with no other option but to pretend to be innocent, aware that the situation might seem suspicious to anyone. With uncertainty in her voice, she lies that her ex was trying to get her to have a baby and that she almost fell for it, but when she discovered those protections, she stashed them in her bag and left. She shudders at the thought of what could have happened if she had gone through with it. Sunghyun is in disbelief, wondering what kind of terrible person her ex is. Yoonji insists that this is a major reason they broke up, unable to fathom how he could have unprotected relations with someone he didn't even want. Sunghyun, still staring at her, asks if she still keeps in touch with her ex. She replies firmly that she doesn't, questioning how she could associate with such a person. Seeing that Sunghyun is not pleased, she contemplates changing the subject. She then reminds him about showing her work and suggests heading to the study. However, she hesitates, realizing the consequences of deceiving him again and the difficulty of recovering from such an act. In the study, Sunghyun assures her that she has all she needs to work and offers his help if she requires anything else. Grateful for his generosity, she thanks him. About to show him her work, which she has uploaded to her drive, she explains that it's in the form of a novel, but she intends to adapt it into a webtoon comic. Curiously, he inquires about who will be responsible for the artwork, to which she replies that her friend has agreed to work with her. She kindly offers him a seat as he scrolls through her work. Sunghyun expresses his admiration, stating that he likes it and finds it enjoyable. He believes it will be even better when she adapts it into a comic. Eager to tailor her work to his preferences, she asks him about the kind of webtoons he enjoys, but he admits he has yet to read many. In a somewhat chilly manner, Yoonji playfully remarks that she should have known he's not the type to read webtoons, and that he's just being polite. He insists that her statement isn't true and mentions that his friend is also working towards becoming a webtoon author. She laughs and tells him she's just kidding, but he playfully scolds her to stop teasing him. As she pecks him, Yoonji affectionately comments that Sunghyun is so cute. Meanwhile, Sunghyun can't help but ponder the mention of her ex. He thinks it might hurt her feelings if he brings it up and is determined not to make her feel any worse about it, as he understands it's not her fault. On the following day, amid the sizzling sounds coming from the kitchen, Yoonji casually remarks to Sunghyun that he seems to be in a good mood and inquires about the quality of his sleep. Sunghyun's response reveals mixed feelings. He's uncertain whether to be happy or not because he's scheduled to have his ankle bracelet removed today. He acknowledges how the bracelet has restricted his movements, preventing him from going to various places, but he now believes he can take her wherever she desires. Yoonji gazes at him, still finding it hard to believe that he could have ended someone's life. He doesn't seem like the type. However, she reflects that there were instances when she herself had toyed with the idea of using a knife, though she never acted on such impulses. In that context, Sunghyun's actions seem oddly impressive to her. Subsequently, they make their way to the car, and Sunghyun offers to escort Yoonji home, but she declines, expressing a desire to take a relaxing stroll and gather her thoughts alone. While driving back, Sunghyun contemplates his upcoming visit to the precinct and his subsequent workload at the office. As he glances in the rearview mirror, he realizes he's been driving for more than 30 minutes, but senses a suspicious presence tailing him. He abruptly comes to a halt, resulting in a collision. The person who had been following him exits his car and offers to exchange insurance information. Angrily, Sunghyun seizes the man's collar, demanding to know who hired him to trail him, specifically questioning if it's his uncle's doing. The man quickly apologizes, explaining that he's merely running errands. Sunghyun persists, inquiring about when the surveillance commenced and the specific locations he'd been following from and to. When the man discloses that he's been tailing him since he left his house that morning, Sunghyun's thoughts shift immediately to Yoonji, realizing she might be in danger. Meanwhile, the scene cuts to Yoonji, who we see lying helplessly on the floor, and amidst the commotion of people shouting for help, she's severely injured. It's then that Sunghyun recollects his uncle's ominous threat to harm Yoonji. The next scene takes us on a little trip down memory lane as we learn that when Yoonji was a child, she once asked her mom why she didn't have a dad. Her mom replied, telling her she's a strong woman who can do everything a man can. Therefore, she doesn't need a dad. However, her mom added that if Yoonji ever wants to see him, she should look in the mirror, as there are traces of him all over her face. It's that exact moment that flashes in her mind as she lies helplessly on the ground, almost unconscious. Sunghyun bursts into his uncle's office, his anger very obvious. His uncle calmly asks him what brings him to his office. When Sunghyun reveals that he's been following him, his uncle fakes surprise and asks if he has come to talk nonsense. The vice president tosses a phone on the table, saying he took it from the person who was following him. He then asks his uncle if he needs any further explanation. Sunghyun continues, revealing that his uncle not only followed him but also dispatched one of his men to tail Yoonji, and now he can't get a hold of her. He raises his voice, demanding to know why his uncle detests her so much. His uncle attempts to deny any knowledge of the situation. Still, Sunghyun lunges forward, banging his hand on the wall behind his uncle, warning him not to mess with him, reminding him of the incident that led to an ankle monitor just a year ago. Still, his uncle insists he knows nothing about Yoonji's whereabouts, claiming there's no use in threatening him. Sunghyun glares at his uncle, who finally relents, saying he wants to apologize for following him but reaffirms his ignorance about Yoonji's location. Sunghyun, though convinced his uncle is playing dumb, decides not to press further, fearing it might put her in even more danger. He tells his uncle that he doesn't understand what he's trying to achieve by following him, but emphasizes that he won't simply sit back and endure it. In response, his uncle raises his voice, claiming someone needs to teach the vice president some manners and questioning his audacity in speaking to his elder in such a way. In the next scene, we see Yoonji in a hospital. She slowly blinks her eyes open and gradually becomes aware of a certain warmth enveloping her. As she awakens fully, to her surprise, she discovers that it's her mother's hand, radiating comforting warmth. She questions her mother about her unexpected presence, inquiring what she's doing here. Her mother, with a gentle smile, responds that she's here to look after her. She goes on to explain that she received distressing news about Yoonji being involved in a hit-and-run motorcycle accident, which resulted in significant blood loss from her head. Furthermore, her mother adds that she coincidentally received a call on the very day of the accident, prompting her to rush to the hospital just as they were prepping Yoonji for surgery. Yoonji, still somewhat dazed and shocked, winces as she shifts and experiences a twinge of pain in her neck. Her mother quickly informs her about the stitches on her head, cautioning her to be careful. Curiosity heightens, and Yoonji inquires about whether the perpetrator has been caught. However, her mother's response is disheartening as she shakes her head and explains that the culprit managed to escape without leaving a trace, not even a license plate. As her mother continues, she reveals that Yoonji remained unconscious for an entire week. But before her mother can complete her statement, she becomes overwhelmed with emotion, and tears stream down her cheeks. Yoonji, now more alert, gazes at her mother and notices the visible signs of strain. It becomes obvious that her mother has lost a significant amount of weight since their last meeting. In an attempt to lift her mother's spirits, Yoonji reassures her not to worry, highlighting the fact that her hospital stay will be covered by insurance. Eager to shift the focus away from the situation, her mother begins inquiring about her daughter's well-being during the past week. As they engage in this heartwarming conversation, Yoonji notices numerous missed calls on her phone. She expresses her concern, stating that her loved ones must be filled with worry. Among the notifications, she discovers a message from Haru, suggesting she doesn't need to collaborate but simply respond to his calls. Promptly, she calls his number to return the call. In the next scene, Sunghyun waits impatiently to access his apartment. A troubling thought crosses his mind: Yoonji has not contacted him for over a week. He decides to pay a visit to her residence. As he approaches her house, he observes that all the lights are switched off, hinting at a strange emptiness. Sunghyun's regret deepens as he realizes that he should have pressed his uncle for more information regarding Yoonji's whereabouts. While riding the elevator, he unexpectedly encounters Suyeon. Realizing this might be his chance to gather information, he tries to catch her attention. Sunghyun expresses his concern about Yoonji's mysterious disappearance and questions whether Suyeon might have any insights into her whereabouts. Suyeon hesitates before answering, revealing that she and Yoonji, whom she refers to as Luna, lost contact over a year ago. The last time they crossed paths was at Secreal Apartments. She jokingly comments on how Luna seems fixated on the 130th floor, almost as if she intentionally seduced a resident from that floor. Sunghyun, growing irritated, demands clarification regarding her comments, and Suyeon quickly apologizes if she has caused offense, but is eager to escape the conversation. Sunghyun, however, seizes her by the arm and insists on knowing more about Luna's fixation with the 130th floor. Suyeon explains, stating that Luna's frequent visits to that floor have raised eyebrows. She mentions that Luna used to reside there before he moved in, hinting at a connection that might hold the key to Yoonji's mysterious circumstances. Looking back, Sunghyun now realizes that there were so many things that seemed suspicious. He questions his own reasons for trying so hard to deny the signs. He gets into his car and makes a call, asking the person on the other end to investigate the previous occupant of the 130th floor at the Secreal Apartments, finding out what they did for a living, why they sold the house, and their current whereabouts. He pleads for this information to be obtained as soon as possible. On the other hand, Haru is just learning about Yoonji's car accident. While on the call with her, he expresses his worry about not being able to reach her and inquires about the hospital she's at so he can visit her. She informs him that she'll be discharged soon and suggests they meet afterward. Before the call ends, Haru tells her that he misses her, which leaves her wondering why he used such a cute voice. She playfully tells him to stop overreacting and promises that they'll meet up as soon as she gets out. She also mentions that she got herself a studio and plans to start writing seriously from now on, adding that she has already drafted a story. At the hospital reception, Yoonji sits there and sends a message to Sunghyun, explaining that she couldn't reach him because of her recent car accident, but she's fine now and suggests he call her when he's free. As she stares at her phone, she wonders if something might have happened to Sunghyun since he hasn't answered her for days. she decides that she'd better visit the Secreal apartments as soon as she's discharged. The nurse at the reception delivers the disheartening news to Yoonji and her mother, explaining that Yoonji's health insurance won't be approved due to her default on payments. In response, Yoonji's mom inquires about how they will manage the impending hospital and surgery expenses. The nurse's reply is optimistic, stating that if Yoonji resolves her defaulted premium, her insurance coverage can be reinstated. Filled with distress, Yoonji's mother decides to explore the possibility of obtaining a loan. However, Yoonji, who had promised not to return to her previous job as a girlfriend for hire, is reluctant to request financial assistance from her mother. In the midst of this turmoil, Yoonji receives a notification from a new client named Sung Jae-hyuk. He offers a substantial sum, 5 times her usual rate, for a same-day appointment. They arrange to meet and introduce themselves before setting off. Although the financial reward for the evening's work is generous, she can't help but feel uneasy. As they begin their meeting, Sung Jae-hyuk reveals his request. He desires her to read to him until he falls asleep, as he suffers from insomnia. Yoonji, somewhat surprised by the simplicity of the request, asks if that's all he wants. They reach their destination, and Yoonji begins reading a book to Sung Jae-hyuk. To her discomfort, the content appears to lean towards erotica. She hesitantly questions if the story is aiding him in falling asleep, but he offers an alternative, stating that they can try something else if she prefers. He instructs Yoonji to open a nearby drawer, which she does, only to be met with a shocking discovery. In response to her surprise, Sung Jae-hyuk proposes a more enticing offer. If she agrees to stay with him until morning, her compensation will be based on her performance throughout the night. Yoonji quickly departs from the hotel, deep in contemplation about why Sung-hyun hasn't been responding to her messages and whether she should visit his place. Suddenly, a message from Sung-hyun arrives, inviting her over. She rushes to his location, but upon entering, she is taken aback by the unusual darkness of his house. Apologetic for her prolonged absence, she begins explaining her recent accident. However, her words are abruptly interrupted as Sung-hyun throws a book at her, instructing her to open it. As she flips the pages, she discovers photographs from her recent encounter with client Sung Jae-hyuk. Taken aback, she attempts to clarify the situation, but Sung-hyun accuses her of frequent misunderstandings. He questions whether he's also mistaken in his belief that she once resided on the 130th floor of the Secreal apartments. Yoonji, who is on the brink of telling more lies, is cut short as Sung-hyun slaps her. In shock, Yoonji stumbles and, in a fit of anger, shouts at him, demanding to know if he just struck her. In the next scene, Dr. Yu, Yoonji's psychiatrist, is seated in his office when Yoonji walks in, her clothes stained bright red. He asks her what's happened, and she explains eerily that she had no choice as it was Sung-hyun who initiated it all. She clarifies that she tried to tell him it was a misunderstanding, but he refused to believe her and resorted to hurtful insults, even calling her homeless. Tearfully, she tells her doctor that she fears she might have hurt Sung-hyun, and then she suddenly jolts and stares at her hand. However, it appears to be an illusion, as there are no bloodstains on her hand, and she looks okay. Dr. Yu inquires about what has brought her to his office today, and she responds that it's becoming increasingly challenging to distinguish between delusions and reality. She contemplates whether she actually harmed Sung-hyun and considers going to check. Abruptly, her head wobbles, and she collapses to the ground. Meanwhile, Sung-hyun is at work and receives a message from his manager, stating that he has found a post that seems highly relevant to the matter he asked him to investigate. As he reads through the post, he realizes that the description matches Yoonji's, triggering memories of the events when he invited her to his home. He recalls her admission of living on the 130th floor of Secreal apartments and her explanation that a year ago, her house and all her belongings were seized. Yoonji had said that Sooyeon had lied about her situation. When her friends saw her dating a man living on the 130th floor of Secreal apartments, after Luna used to reside there, she likely found it absurd. Sung-hyun remembers the night before when he had questioned her about why she went on a date with another man, and she explained it was for work. She expressed a desire to quit but recounted being involved in a hit-and-run accident a few days ago, leading to treatment for a brain hemorrhage, which needs insurance coverage. However, she had defaulted on her payments and lacked the funds to reach him, leaving her with no choice but to proceed. Sung-hyun also remembers revealing his suspicion that his uncle might be responsible for the hit-and-run, given his uncle's continuous surveillance. He apologized and assured Yoonji that he will take responsibility for his uncle's actions, no matter what. Feeling overwhelmed, she rushed out of his house. All these memories flood through Sung-hyun's mind as he continues to read through the post until his grandfather enters the room. His grandfather informs him that he's going to appoint him as the vice chairman at the next board of directors meeting. Since he has gotten rid of the horrid ankle bracelet, there's no need to wait any longer. "What about my uncle?" he asks, and his grandfather replies by saying that this is the price he pays for neglecting his children in the name of doing business. He adds that he's not qualified at all. His grandfather says that Sung-hyun's father, Sung-joon, was always cruel and violent ever since he was little, but the real problem is his big brother, Sung-wook. He is incompetent and incapable, so he always finds a way to blame others, and he's willing to do anything for his gain. His grandfather warns him to be careful of his uncle, because he could be a huge threat to him one day. With Sung-hyun's father out of the picture, if the sole objective is to grow the company into a bigger company, it is right to choose his uncle as the heir. That's because his uncle is desperate to expand the company's business, and he is willing to take extreme measures to improve the company's profit. However, Sung-hyun's grandfather wants the company to become a better one, and in that sense, his grandson seems to be a better fit because sometimes, the right answer has nothing to do with output and results. He tells his grandfather that he's not ready yet and asks for some time to think it over. But the old man tells him that he wants him to make his decision soon. Meanwhile, at Yuhasung Neuropsychiatry Clinic, Yoonji has just been revived, and she's being offered some water. Panting, she says she can't breathe, and her doctor directs her on what to do. He asks her if she'll be okay and tries suggesting something else, but she intercepts, saying it's okay and thanking him. He asks her again if he can look into a hospital for her, but she insists on going home. The door creaks open, and she exits his office, thinking to herself. She says she doesn't know what just happened, but she's pretty sure nothing happened with Sung-hyun. Suddenly, her phone buzzes, and it's a call from Haru asking her if she's out of the hospital. She affirms, and he tells her that he had a really bad day today and asks to spend the day with her. Yoonji, concerned for Haru's well-being, inquires about his current whereabouts and whether he's facing any difficulties. However, Haru, instead of addressing her question, offers an apology for reaching out on such short notice. In response, Yoonji suggests that she should take a taxi to reach him promptly, intending to use the money she acquired from her previous client's hotel room. Though she can't help but recall the events that transpired before she obtained his money, it's important to note that she had no intentions of engaging in any inappropriate activities with him. She simply perceived him as an easy target and promptly blocked his number after the transaction. Meanwhile, as Yoonji arrives at Haru's residence and rings the doorbell, she's taken aback when he appears with his bare chest partially concealed by a towel. Caught off guard, Haru stumbles into an explanation, claiming that he mistook her for the delivery person. He hadn't anticipated her swift arrival, as he usually takes his time getting ready. With Yoonji's reassurance for him to dress at his own pace, he proceeds to share the ongoing challenges he's facing in his life. Yoonji, speculating whether his troubles stem from his webtoon project, pledges to expedite her efforts to assist him. However, Haru asserts that his family has given him an ultimatum to move back home, coupled with the discouraging notion that his apparent lack of artistic talent hinders his success. He acknowledges that these words are likely intended to spur him into greater efforts, but he finds himself disheartened, wondering why they affect him so deeply. Observing his vulnerable state, Yoonji, though inwardly judgmental, assures him that she's weathered similar storms. She recounts a time when she faced the threat of being fired due to unwarranted criticism stemming from false accusations against her mother's business, which led her family from prosperity to financial turmoil. This experience shattered her perception of herself as a strong and optimistic individual, realizing that her resilience had been a product of her environment rather than a true reflection of her character. She advises Haru to cease berating himself, emphasizing the courage it took to leave home to pursue his dreams. She underscores that his family should be his support system instead of subjecting him to verbal abuse during an already challenging period when he's struggling to publish his webtoon. Yoonji's determination is unwavering as she points to Haru, asserting her commitment to crafting a compelling story for him. Haru, privately reflecting on Yoonji's wisdom, marvels at how she has grown into an even more extraordinary, beautiful, and resolute person than he remembers. He ponders how anyone can be this perfect. Their conversation spreads to various topics, and eventually, Haru excuses himself to use the bathroom. Yoonji soon realizes that she has consumed way too much drink, and now she's feeling dizzy. She flops onto the bed, and almost immediately, Haru comes into the room and sees her lying down. He offers to call her a taxi, but she insists that she just wants to sleep at his place. Besides, she knows he won't make a move on her because he's such a nice guy. After hearing this, he informs her that he's a man, too, and she playfully calls him cute, but he responds by saying it's not that he's not cute, but he had wanted to take things slow with her. Nevertheless, he leans in closer. In another scene, Sunghyun's manager brings an additional report on Yoonji and mentions that he has attached some sensitive information as well. While Sunghyun examines the photos, he notices that they are from Reamer's 12th anniversary event. It dawns on him that she is the daughter of Reamer's CEO. Sunghyun appears to be deeply shocked, mainly because Reamer's downfall can be traced back solely to Innocence, which happens to be his family's company. We learn that about a year ago, his father introduced the concept of a cosmetics company, branding it the Innocence to convey an image of harmlessness and purity. During a meeting with his dad, Sunghyun couldn't help but inquire why there was a sudden interest in expanding their beauty business. His uncle unexpectedly burst into the room, asserting that it wasn't an appropriate place for a child like Sunghyun. Nevertheless, his dad insisted that he was old enough to take an interest in the company's operations. Both Sunghyun's father and uncle went to great lengths, even hiring broadcasters, to tarnish Reamer's reputation. They continued to delve into their strategic plans for expanding the beauty business, leaving Sunghyun with nothing to do but listen carefully. When he finally mustered the courage to question their actions, his father dismissed him, claiming he was too young to comprehend, but he'd grasp it all in due time. Presently, Sunghyun realizes that not only has he taken the 130th floor of Seagrill Apartments from Yoonji, but he has also acquired her mother's company and disrupted her once happy family life. He considers himself an accomplice, even though he was a mere listener when all the decisions were made by his dad and uncle a year ago. He cannot deny his wrongdoing, so he resolves to take responsibility. Meanwhile, at Haru's house, they continue to share intimate moments. Much later, Yoonji falls asleep. A little while later, she blinks and opens her eyes, wondering where Haru has disappeared to. Suddenly, a wave of anxiety and restlessness washes over her, making her question whether her previous actions were a misstep. Just when her thoughts spiral, Haru reappears with a beaming smile, bearing a bouquet. Yoonji, curious, inquires about the unexpected flowers. Haru's grin widens as he confesses his feelings, asking her if she'd like to be his girlfriend. In a different scene, we find Sunghyun's grandfather slyly sliding open a window. He entrusts the Innocence's fate to his grandson, and then, in a sudden and dramatic turn of events, he leaps through the window. What follows is an abrupt crashing sound. At Moon Sunghyun's vice-chairman's inauguration, everyone is seated, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the chairman to kickstart the event. Sunghyun, however, senses that something is wrong because his grandfather is never late. The atmosphere is tense. Abruptly, a man bursts into the room with sad news: the chairman has jumped off the rooftop, and there's been an emergency. The hall erupts in hushed conversations and anxious murmurs, but Sunghyun's uncle appears oddly pleased by the turn of events. This sudden revelation triggers a series of thoughts in Sunghyun's uncle's mind. He recalls a conversation where he learned that his father had appointed his grandson, Sunghyun, as the vice chairman. Furthermore, a newly drafted will designates him as the heir who will inherit the Innocence, the family's legacy. This shocking revelation weighs heavily on his conscience, igniting a fury that compels him to lash out, shattering objects in his vicinity. He vows not to let this happen. The mystery of whether he has any involvement in these events remains unresolved. Fast forward to the funeral of Sunghyun's grandfather, and there's an air of uncertainty among the guests. Did the chairman really jump from the company building? Was it suicide? Sunghyun stands amidst the mourners, his mind racing with thoughts about the future of the Innocence. Tears flow down his cheeks as he strongly denies that his grandfather would ever commit suicide. Suddenly, the calmness is shattered as the police arrive to arrest him, casting him as the prime suspect in a murder case. While in police custody, Sunghyun strongly denies the accusations and demands to know why he's being held. The officer presents a document, the will left behind by Chairman Moon Ju-young, his grandfather. It appears to imply that Sung Hyun had threatened the chairman to appoint him as the vice chairman. Furious and desperate, Sung Hyun protests his innocence, claiming that he's being framed. The police officer counters, pointing out that Sung Hyun already has a record for ending his father's life, and now his grandfather has met a similar fate. He even insinuates that the motive behind his grandfather's death was to gain control of the company. In the midst of this heated argument, Sung Hyun's mind races as he recalls his grandfather's warning about the potential threat posed by his uncle. Desperate to clear his name, Sung Hyun requests access to his phone to make a call. The officer, wary of potential evidence tampering or accomplices, hesitates. Sung Hyun then inquires about the duration of his detainment, to which the policeman replies that it depends on when he reveals why he threatened and unalived the chairman. Sung Hyun, determined to prove his innocence and seek justice for his grandfather, ponders his next move. Meanwhile, at Haru's house, he has just confessed his feelings to Yoonji. However, she's contemplating the fate of her relationship with Sung Hyun, even though she has deep feelings for Haru, and being with him brings her a sense of ease and comfort. After a moment of contemplative silence, she expresses her gratitude to him for the flowers. Haru, on the other hand, apologizes for the sudden confession and acknowledges that he might understand her hesitation. He admits he lacks financial stability and a job, feeling unworthy of someone like her. Deep down, Yoonji ponders on the potential consequences of her relationship with Sung Hyun, her role as a girlfriend for hire, her therapy sessions, and her mother's expectations if she chooses to be with Haru. Haru reassures her not to worry about him, urging her to take her time to think things through. He mentions his aspiration to make a name for himself as a webtoon artist so he can be the kind of boyfriend she can rely on. He also conveys his sincere desire to be with her, promising to work diligently toward that goal. As a heartfelt gesture, he holds her hand and says he'll patiently await her decision. Fast forward 1 month, Yoonji and Haru find themselves in his apartment, collaborating on their webtoon project. She mentions that she has made some edits to the dialogue on the 5th page of the 5th episode and assures Haru that she'll send it over immediately. Yoonji suddenly realizes she has been unusually exhausted lately, wondering if her intense preparations for the upcoming art exhibit have taken a toll on her. She decides it's time to satisfy her hunger, prompting her to ask Haru if he'd like to order some spicy pig's feet. However, he seems surprised by her frequent eating habits. In response, Haru gently reminds her that they had already shared a meal of triangle kimbap and cup ramen just an hour ago. Yoonji insists that it wasn't enough to suppress her hunger. Concerned, he inquires if she's been feeling stressed. Haru acknowledges that they have an open exhibit to prepare for, but emphasizes that her well-being should take priority. In reply, Yoonji reassures him that she's not stressed at all and is genuinely enjoying their creative endeavors. She also confesses that this work is far more fulfilling than her previous job as a girlfriend for hire. Suddenly, Yoonji realizes the peculiarity of her physical condition. She retrieves her phone, opens her period tracking app, and discovers that she is 14 days late. Her shock leads to a pressing question: whose baby is it? With a creaking sound, the door to Sung Hyun's apartment swings open. He enters, exhausted, and collapses onto his couch. He can't help but contemplate whether it has already been nearly a month since his grandfather's funeral. He recalls how the police thoroughly searched through the innocents, looking for any piece of evidence. His life had been consumed by aiding the police investigation, but now he finds himself confined to his residence until the upcoming trial. This restriction means he can no longer leave his house. In the midst of these thoughts, Sung Hyun realizes that he hasn't reached out to Yoonji since the traumatic incident. He can't help but wonder how she's coping, even though he knows there are pressing matters he must attend to before he can visit her. He decides to make a phone call regarding the legal request he initiated earlier, expressing his determination to push forward with it. At the Yuhasung Neuropsychiatry Clinic, Dr. Yu sits in his office, his gaze fixed on a picture frame adorning his desk. Suddenly, his phone rings, and it's his mother on the line. She delivers the worrisome news that they must closely monitor his father, as his health has taken a turn for the worse. Just as he absorbs this concerning information, his staff member enters with a list of patients scheduled for the day. As he scans the list, his attention is drawn to Yoonji's appointment, which is marked as cancelled. He's informed that Yoonji had called to explain that an urgent matter had arisen. 2 weeks earlier, Dr. Yu had received a message from his mother urging him to visit the hospital after work due to his father's deteriorating condition. While he contemplated this message, a knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Yoonji entered his office, bearing beverages and a warm smile. She expressed her gratitude for his help during her previous visit, when she had experienced a severe bout of hyperventilation, even bringing a drink for one of the nurses as a token of her appreciation. Noticing the distracted look on Dr. Yu's face, Yoonji inquired if something was wrong. Apologetic, he refocused and prepared to begin her therapy session. However, Yoonji slid a picture frame across the desk to him, and as he gazed upon it, he realized it's a photograph of her in a beautiful wedding dress. Yoonji discloses that she had the photos taken with her own funds as a gesture of gratitude, wanting to repay his kindness. She also confessed her past and present affection for him, acknowledging that she had developed feelings beyond a professional nature, even though she understood the impossibility of their relationship. She admits feeling somewhat peculiar about her emotions, but Dr. Yu reassures her, explaining that such emotional transference is not uncommon between psychiatrists and their patients. Yoonji understood that he couldn't reciprocate her feelings, and that pursuing a romantic connection was out of the question due to her status as a patient. However, her primary motive in sharing her feelings was to unburden herself and sort out her emotions during a chaotic time in her life. Dr. Yu repeated the naturalness of her emotions, emphasizing that transference phenomena frequently occur during consultations. He then proceeded to ask her a series of questions to understand her state of mind better. As their discussion ended, Yoonji expressed her gratitude and stated her intention to work on overcoming the transference phenomenon. As she headed for the office exit, she paused and mentioned that she read about the possibility of doctors engaging in relationships with former patients 3 years after terminating their professional connection. Dr. Yu confirmed this fact, and with that, Yoonji bid him farewell and left his office. In the following scene, we gather information about Yoonji's current situation. She's distressed by the fact that she's 14 days late, leading her to question whether she might be pregnant. This dilemma leads her to contemplate drinking soy sauce as a potential remedy. As she delves into her thoughts, she reflects on the 2 possible sources of her pregnancy, her previous encounter with Haru and the uncertain status of her relationship with Sung Hyun. She gazes intently at the marked date on her calendar, pondering the weight of her predicament. Despite her personal problems, she recognizes the need to stay focused, especially in preparation for the upcoming contest. Haru has been investing significant effort and dedication to achieve his dream of debuting as a webtoon artist. In this critical moment, Yoonji acknowledges her determination not to ruin Haru's ambitions, regardless of her pregnancy status. She understands that she must forge ahead with her manuscript, determined to fulfill her own aspirations while supporting Haru's dreams. Later that night, Yoonji finds herself still engrossed in her work on the story. Haru enters the room and gently advises her to take a break, knowing she has been pulling all-nighters for days. Haru, reflecting on the importance of maintaining her flow, believes that it has become increasingly challenging for her to work. So, with a sense of trust in Yoonji's dedication, he decides it's time for him to head to bed. The next morning, Yoonji wakes Haru from his sleep to share the news that she has completed the story. She excitedly asks if he'd like to read it, but the swiftness of her progress takes him aback. As he delves into the story, he's captivated by the story's brilliance and becomes convinced that it's bound for success. Just as he's about to set to work on the illustrations, Yoonji surprises him with an unexpected question: will he do a job? He turns to her, clearly shocked by her inquiry. She explains that something urgent has come up, and she doubts she'll have the chance to review his artwork. He inquires about the nature of the urgency, and suddenly, a sense of unease washes over him. It's as though the idea of her leaving makes him anxious, as if he might never see her again. With a sense of urgency, he proposes going with her, believing that facing whatever it is together would be better. Yoonji gently clasps his hand and tells him that this is something she needs to handle on her own, urging him to stay behind and finish the story they've worked so hard on. Curious, he asks her where she's headed, and she responds that she's going home. In other words, the Segreal apartments. At the Segreal apartments, Sung Hyun is feeling frustrated by the heaps of materials cluttering his desk without any circumstantial evidence. His mind is still pondering ways to secure evidence before the impending trial. In the midst of this turmoil, Yoonji arrives at his doorstep. Initially, she suspects he's been deliberately avoiding her, as his phone remained unanswered. However, he quickly explains that he's been preoccupied with some pressing matters, which prevented him from using his phone. In a surprising turn of events, she asks him to lend her his hand momentarily. When he complies, she places a pregnancy test strip in his hand. While he observes the test strip, she reveals that she's uncertain about its results and plans to visit the hospital on Monday to ascertain the validity of the test. In a moment of genuine concern, Sung-hyun takes her in his arms, apologizing for not answering his phone, recognizing the anxiety it must have caused her. He continues to apologize for the hardship he put her through and also for making her anxious. However, before he can finish his statement, she gently squeezes herself out of his embrace. Her words cut deep as she expresses doubt about the baby's paternity and declares that they cannot simply go back to their previous relationship. Overwhelmed by the emotional situation, Yoonji's tears begin to flow uncontrollably. Sung-hyun, in response, remains firm, assuring her that it doesn't matter. He acknowledges that he may not be entirely unaffected by the revelation, but he insists that, right now, that's not the most important thing. He stresses the need to discuss the details later, emphasizing the importance of caring for her well-being. His caring words bring tears to her eyes as she thinks to herself that he hasn't changed one bit, and she can hardly believe he just said it doesn't matter. On the other hand, Sung-hyun struggles with his own emotions. He recognizes he has no right to be disappointed, even if it turns out not to be his child, considering he was never officially her boyfriend and failed to keep in touch. During this emotional exchange, Sung-hyun's phone rings, interrupting their conversation. His manager is on the line, calling to provide information regarding the chairman's properties. So, he informs Yoonji about the current situation and excuses himself to rush to the office, emphasizing that she shouldn't go anywhere as he'll be back shortly. Upon arriving at the office, his manager updates him, stating that things are calm for the moment but they'll resume soon. The manager then asks him if he'd like to go up there right away, to which he readily agrees. While on his way, a voice calls out, "Hyung," a term used by younger males to address an older male. Sung-hyun freezes upon hearing this and turns to realize that it's Haru who's calling him. This unexpected encounter prompts him to question Haru's presence at the office. Yoonji's mom, Kim Ji-yeon, has just finished her work, with her thoughts consumed by her daughter's health. As she strolls along, a man suddenly approaches her, inquiring if she's CEO Kim of Reamer Cosmetics. She instinctively denies being the one, her mind racing with thoughts that he might be here to collect debt payments or request an interview. However, the man proceeds to explain that he's a lawyer working on a case for Vice Chairman Moon Sung-hyun of the Innocents, and he desperately needs her assistance. Meanwhile, at the office, Sung-hyun questions Haru's presence there. Realizing he's running behind schedule, he politely asks Haru to wait for a brief moment while he tends to an urgent matter, promising they will continue their conversation soon. Within the office, whispers spread through the air, as employees gossip about the vice chairman's unexpected appearance when he's supposed to be under house arrest. Haru overhears these conversations, prompting him to conclude his meeting with Sung-hyun, promising to reconnect at a later time. When Sung-hyun eventually arrives at his grandfather's office, he surveys the room with a touch of disappointment. His quest for potential evidence appears futile, given the completed field investigation. In this moment, he fondly recalls a conversation he had with his grandfather, who expressed undoubting belief in him. Driven by sentiment, Sung-hyun decides to preserve his grandfather's belongings, even if they fail to serve as evidence. Consequently, he proceeds to pack up and make his way to his car. Just then, Haru appears before him, explaining that he waited in the parking lot due to the unsettling attention they received earlier, and he requests a private conversation. As they find a quiet corner to sit, Haru reflects on the events that transpired earlier at his home. The troubling absence of Yoonji weighed heavily on his mind, making it impossible to concentrate on his work. To clear his head, he decided to step out for a coffee. Upon leaving his house, he encounters a man who inquires if he resides in Unit 302. The man kindly reminds him to separate his garbage properly, realizing that he had failed to do so. Haru promptly apologizes and proceeds to rectify the situation by sorting his waste. As he sifts through the refuse, his eyes lock onto a pregnancy test. Gazing at the test, he can't help but wonder if Yoonji had grown anxious after their intimate encounter. To his surprise, the test has returned a positive result, deepening the mysteries and uncertainties in his life. Back at Sung-hyan's apartment, Yoonji remains in anticipation, waiting for him to return, even though she suspects he's running behind schedule. Her gaze wanders across the scattered documents on his desk, prompting her to ponder if they pertain to his profession, implying that he must be deeply engrossed in his work. Filled with curiosity and a lack of knowledge about him, Yoonji finally decides to look through the papers, hoping to uncover the mystery of his occupation. As she delves into the contents of these scattered documents, a sudden revelation dawns upon her, leaving her utterly shocked. Yoonji stumbles upon the shocking truth that Sung-hyun is employed by none other than the Innocents, an archenemy of her own family. Suddenly, and without warning, the apartment door bursts open, and Sung-hyun enters, deeply apologetic for his lateness. He excitedly announces the presence of an unexpected guest he's brought with him. Sung-hyun walks into the room with his guest, Haru. He calls out Yoonji's name, addressing her as Luna, but there's no response. Inwardly, he thinks she must have gone out. Haru, curious, asks him if his girlfriend's name is Luna, finding it to be quite a unique name. As it's time for him to depart, Sung-hyun expresses his gratitude to Haru for helping him carry his belongings. Just before leaving, he notices some of the items they brought back and asks if he can take a particular pen. He explains that he wants to draw using his grandfather's pen, especially since he couldn't stay at the funeral for long due to work commitments. Haru thanks Sung-hyun for the pen and makes his exit. Suddenly, Yoonji steps out, and Sung-hyun asks her if she was in the study the whole time. She, in turn, inquires about the documents on the table and his relationship with the Innocents. Yoonji reveals her mother's belief that the Innocents had framed them and caused Reamer's downfall, and she suspects that the people at the Innocents were the source of their suffering. Yoonji, though hopeful that Sung-hyun is not associated with the Innocents, presses him for more details. Unfortunately, her hopes are dashed as Sung-hyun discloses that he is, in fact, the vice-chairman of the Innocents. He goes on to explain that her mother was correct, the Innocents had targeted Reamer. Moreover, his uncle devised a broadcast that fabricated Reamer's heavy metal levels, recruiting a producer and research staff to falsify the results. Despite being aware of this, Sung-hyun admits that he did nothing to prevent it, making him feel like an accomplice in Reamer's downfall. Overwhelmed with emotion, he slumps to the ground, apologizing to Yoonji. However, she doesn't let up and asks for more details. Sung-hyun proceeds to share everything, from how his uncle and father planned Reamer's demise to his strong belief that his uncle was responsible for his grandfather's death. Yoonji, oddly composed, takes in this shocking revelation, even though Sung-hyun's uncle had kicked her family from Seagriel and taken their place. At Haru's house, he is lying on his bed, lost in thought, pondering the pregnancy test he stumbled upon in the garbage. His mind races as he recalls the rush call he made to Yoonji. He was gripped by a sense of impending crisis regarding the pregnancy. In his uncertainty, he retrieves his phone and dials her number, wanting to know her whereabouts. He hesitates before spilling the beans, revealing that he discovered the pregnancy tests in the trash. Yoonji's instant denial of ownership brings an unexpected wave of relief that washes over him. With the assurance that the tests were not Yoonji's, he decides to refocus on the unfinished manuscript. But as he returns to his desktop, a sudden shock jolts him. He notices recent internet searches related to pregnancy. He's left speechless, gazing blankly at the screen, when his phone suddenly rings. He picks up, realizing it's his father on the other end, questioning why he hasn't been answering his calls. Haru hastily responds that he was preoccupied with preparations for the contest exhibit. His father, however, dismisses it as a waste of time and invites Haru to his office, explaining his intention to discuss the company's management. He surprises Haru by expressing his desire for him to assume the role of vice-chairman at the Innocents. From this scene, the revelation emerges that Haru's father is Sung-hyun's uncle. Haru initially declines the offer, stating his disinterest. Yet, his father persists, hinting at hidden family secrets by mentioning his grandfather's will. This document, as he discloses, falsely claims that Sung-hyun had threatened his grandfather. Haru remains skeptical of his cousin's alleged wrongdoing, further straining their relationship. The conversation is postponed and slated for continuation at the office. This series of events pushes Haru to the office, but upon his arrival, he's unable to reach his father. Frustrated, he considers discussing the matter with Sung-hyun, yet that avenue remains blocked as well. Stuck in this web of family trouble and an unresolved situation with Yoonji, Haru reluctantly postpones his meeting with his cousin. As he lies on his bed, the weight of these complications continues to weigh heavily on Haru's mind. He retrieves the pen he took from Sung-hyun, once believed to be an ordinary writing tool, only to discover it is a concealed USB drive. Could this concealed USB hold the evidence that Sung-hyun desperately needs? From previous scenes, we learn that Sung-hyun's lawyer paid a visit to Yoonji's mother. During their meeting, he explains that the vice chairman is currently confined to the 130th floor of Seagreal Apartments, and that's why he's representing him. Yoonji's mother expresses her suspicion that the innocents had fabricated news reports to bring down her company, and she was certain that Moon Sung-wook was behind it all. Now, her curiosity is heightened about the purpose of the meeting. The lawyer informs her that they possess concrete evidence proving that the broadcast against her company was fabricated, and Vice Chairman Moon Sung-hyun is interested in providing this material. Surprised, she raises her voice, demanding to know why the vice chairman cares about Reamer now. The lawyer explains that it relates to President Moon Sung-wook. The primary objective of the meeting is to gather information about the president, so they continue their conversation about him. At Sung-hyun's house, he is still kneeling before Yoonji, offering a heartfelt apology for his role as an accomplice in the downfall of her mother's company, Reamer. Judging by his character and attitude toward Yoonji, she is convinced that someone else was the mastermind behind her family's misfortune. Nevertheless, she doesn't hold back her emotions. She admits to harboring thoughts of vengeance, confessing that she initially wished ill upon anyone responsible for her mother's company's demise, including Sung-hyun. Moreover, she goes on to explain how her feelings underwent a transformation over time. She reveals that, despite her initial resentment, Sung-hyun managed to capture her heart, leading to the emergence of absurd thoughts like meeting in a different place and being happy together with him, had Reamer not gone down. She emphasizes that it's not his fault that Reamer met its unfortunate fate, and even if it were, she doesn't care about the pain he may have caused her, because her feelings for him run so deep. With teary eyes, she extends a hand to help him rise from the ground. After staring at her for a moment, Sung-hyun reciprocates her feelings, admitting that he shares the same deep affection for her. Sometime later, while Yoonji is peacefully asleep, Sung-hyun watches over her, gently stroking her hair, an act that eventually wakes her from sleep. As Yoonji wakes up, Sung-hyun asks that they stop being friends with benefits, but she seems confused. In response, he explains that he wants them to start dating officially, though he realizes it isn't the best timing. However, he doesn't want to put it off because of their circumstances, fearing future regrets. Furthermore, he adds that he'll take full responsibility for Reamer and the baby. Meanwhile, Haru is in his house, engrossed in trying to understand the mystery pen he discovered. It dawns on him that it's a recording device capturing a conversation. He can't help but notice that the conversation was between his grandfather and his father, which hints at his father going after his grandfather. This revelation stirs up a series of questions, and he wonders if Sung-hyun has any knowledge about this family secret and decides to call him immediately. Just as he's about to dial, he comes across a picture of Sung-hyun with Yoonji, leaving him pondering the implications of this unexpected connection. Over 3 decades ago, when Yoonji's mother was in a relationship with Sung-hyun's uncle, he consistently looked down on her. Upon hearing her announcement about starting a cosmetic company, he couldn't help but laugh heartily, deeming her idea hilarious. It seemed as if he never approved of her accomplishments, almost as though he couldn't find happiness in her achievements. Raining on her parade became his favored pastime, as all he ever seemed to desire was for her to stay home and focus on childbearing, with the ultimate aim of marrying her. Their relationship eventually came to an end on a fateful day. Yoonji's mother recounted this history to the lawyer who had come on behalf of Sung-hyun. She confides in him about her suspicion that Moon Sung-wook might have fabricated the broadcast and stolen business secrets from Reamer to benefit the innocents. The lawyer notes that Moon Sung-hyun is entangled in a similar situation and is in dire need of her cooperation, should she possess any information that could assist them. In response, she expresses her willingness to help in any way she could, despite her strong dislike for the president. However, she confesses that she can think of no further information. Nevertheless, she suggests that the CCTV camera in the vice chairman's study might have captured something significant. She provides the lawyer with the CCTV password and begins to make her exit. She had come to terms with the fact that Reamer had ended, and no action of hers could alter the situation. She is determined to avoid entangling herself with someone like Sungwook ever again. As she is about to depart, the lawyer calls her back, hinting at another compelling reason for her to cooperate. He discloses the shocking news that her daughter is in a romantic relationship with the vice chairman. Meanwhile, unknown to them, a woman nearby had been secretly recording their conversation. At the Seagreal apartments, Yoonji and Sunghyun are still deep in conversation about their relationship when suddenly, Sunghyun's phone rings. It's Haru on the line, and he's about to share some highly sensitive information. Haru informs Sunghyun that the seemingly harmless pen he brought home has turned out to be a miniature recorder. Even more intriguing, there's something recorded on it that might date back to a time before their grandfather's tragic jump. Haru suggests that this newfound evidence might be the key to proving Sunghyun's innocence at the upcoming trial. Haru wastes no time and sends Sunghyun an address, urging him to meet up right away. Trusting in the importance of this revelation, Sunghyun arrives at the designated location and immediately inquires about the mysterious pen, and he also seeks confirmation from Haru regarding the significant phone call. Haru, with a gravity in his expression, proceeds to reveal shocking information. He discloses that his father had, in fact, threatened their grandfather and even raised his voice, pressuring him to change his will. As if unveiling a hidden treasure, Haru opens the lid of the pen to reveal a concealed USB drive. He explains that their grandfather was secretly recording his father during these intense confrontations. Just as Sunghyun suggests they listen to the contents of the recording, Haru interjects with a sudden shift in the conversation. He informs Sunghyun that he has something of great importance to discuss before he lets go of the pen. With anticipation in the air, Haru goes ahead and asks the question that has been on his mind. Haru points to the girl in Sunghyun's profile picture and straightforwardly inquires if she is his girlfriend. Sunghyun, without hesitation, confirms her identity. In an unexpected turn of events, Haru's reaction is swift and dramatic. He drops the pen to the ground, shattering it into pieces. The tension in the air becomes obvious. Haru then presses further, asking his cousin if his girlfriend is pregnant. Once again, Sunghyun affirms, though he appears somewhat surprised that Haru is aware of such intimate details. However, Haru is firm in his assertion that the child is his. He reveals that he had an intimate encounter with Yoonji. It turns out that the woman who had recorded the conversation between Luna's mom and the lawyer was sent by Sunghyun's uncle. She arrives with the recording and the passcode she managed to obtain. The president asserts that the events of that day in the study must never be disclosed to the world, and so he is determined to eliminate CCTV surveillance at any cost. With urgency, he swiftly makes his way to Seagreal apartments, where the incriminating evidence is stored. As he journeys to the apartment, he contemplates how to lure Sunghyun out of his house, considering that he's currently under house arrest and likely confined to his home. Just as he nears the apartment, he spots Sunghyun leaving his residence. Seizing the opportunity, the president employs his spare key to gain entry and conducts a careful search, but he initially observes no apparent signs of a camera on the ceiling. However, his perseverance pays off when he eventually locates it cleverly concealed within a book, seemingly strapped by a wire, behind the desk. In the race against the clock, he contemplates the possibility of extracting the hard drive to destroy the evidence. Suddenly, Yoonji emerges from the shadows, holding a knife, her presence shattering the president's concentration. While Haru and Sunghyun argue about the broken pen and Yoonji, Haru reveals that the pregnancy she is carrying is his. At that moment, countless thoughts and possibilities cross Sunghyun's mind. He decides that, no matter what the facts are, he has no choice but to fix this. So, he picks up the broken pen and says that Yoonji told him that the baby might not be his, and he even suggests they sit down and talk about it. Then, he asks Haru if he met her through a girlfriend-for-hire app, and Haru affirms, explaining that he hired her to do a little investigation for his webtoon. He also complains about the fake name Yoonji gave him and not revealing her real name for over a month. Sunghyun instructs him to listen carefully and explains that it's important for them to know who Yoonji is and why she started working as a girlfriend for hire. He slowly explains everything from the beginning in detail, from her being the daughter of Reamer's chairman, who used to live at Seagreal apartments. He also reveals that their fathers purposely brought down Reamer, and he had no choice but to stay friends with benefits with her instead of properly dating because his uncle had threatened them. Haru is surprised by all he has heard so far, but Sung-hyun continues to explain that his uncle hired someone to commit a hit-and-run on Yoonji after finding out about their relationship. Furthermore, he says that she continued to work as a girlfriend for hire to pay off her insurance fees, and they fought because he misunderstood her intentions. Then he got arrested because of their grandfather's will, so he was so busy with the investigation that he lost touch with her for a while, and that's when Haru probably met her. Sung-hyun tries to calm Haru down by saying he understands how he feels, but their fighting won't solve anything. However, someone else needs to take the biggest responsibility, and that person is none other than Haru's father. Sung-hyun believes there is one cause behind everything, from why Yoonji started working as a girlfriend for hire to their current situation, which is his uncle, Moon Sung-wook. While this conversation is happening, Sung-hyun's uncle is in his apartment, trying to choke Yoonji. In the next scene, we learn that an hour earlier, Yoonji was alone in Sung-hyun's home, determined to cook him something special. Her thoughts drifted back to the exquisite necklace he had given her before he left for his errands, and she couldn't help but wonder about its significance, so she decided to inquire. Sung-hyun shared the story behind the necklace, explaining that when they first met, her eyes had a strange resemblance to the necklace, which held sentimental value as it once belonged to his late mother. The idea of accepting something so precious tugged at Yoonji's heart, and she hesitated, questioning if it was okay. In response, Sung-hyun reassured her that it now belonged to her, and once everything was resolved, they would have a lifetime together to cherish it. He gently placed the necklace in her hands and reminded her that they must wait a bit longer for everything to be resolved. With a gaze filled with satisfaction and a heart filled with love, Yoonji wished for Sung-hyun's safety as he stepped out of the apartment. She resumed her cooking while thinking about the depth of Sung-hyun's feelings for her. Her mind wandered to the big question of whether someone as caring as him could truly be responsible for his father's demise. In her contemplation, her phone suddenly beeped, snapping her back to reality. It was a message confirming her appointment at the clinic scheduled for the next day. Internally, she resolved to find out if she was indeed pregnant. If the test returned positive, she knew she had no other choice but to come clean with Haru about her true feelings. She's in love with someone else and can't reciprocate his affection. Just then, the doorbell rang, and her heart fluttered with excitement, convinced that Sung-hyun had returned. But as she made her way to the door, her expectations shattered as she found herself face to face with a stranger. Meanwhile, Sung-hyun and Haru are still deeply engrossed in resolving the ongoing situation. Haru turns to his cousin with a heavy heart and asks whether they should let his father take the blame for everything. He delves into a series of issues, suggesting that his grandfather, father, and cousin may all bear responsibility for the complex situation they find themselves in. Back at Sung-hyun's house, as his uncle continues searching his house, Yoonji secretly emerges behind him, clutching a knife. When he suddenly turns around, she attempts to strike him with the knife, but ends up merely grazing his face, leaving a small bruise. She issues a stern warning for him to keep his distance, threatening to take his life, but he insists that he only came to borrow a book. In the midst of their tense disagreement, he suddenly recognizes Yoonji as the woman his nephew introduced to him and expresses his surprise at finding her there. While pretending to give his blessing for her and Sung-hyun to continue seeing each other, he slyly scans the room for an object to use against her without her notice. He even casually inquires about their current relationship status. After securing an improvised weapon, he abruptly strikes her in the face, causing her to stagger and fall. He then swiftly recovers the knife and threatens her with it, reminding her of the promise he made to Sung-hyun about removing her eyes. With Yoonji still on the ground, she urgently implores Moon Sung-wook to recognize that he's the one responsible for Reamer's downfall. However, he starts explaining that Reamer's fate was sealed from the beginning, and he never approved of anything Kim Ji-yeon, Yoonji's mom, did. Luna finds herself contemplating her next move and ultimately summons the courage to act. She forcefully thwacks her head against Moon Sung-wook's, seizing the opportunity to grab the knife once more. As she attempts to strike him again, her attack narrowly misses, causing her to slash his hands, mistakenly. Furious by her audacity to wound him, Moon Sung-wook is now determined in his intent to end her life. He seizes her by the neck and begins choking her while she silently cries for Sung-hyun's help. In a revelation, Moon Sung-wook discloses a dark secret to Yoonji. He shares that her mother ended ties with him on a specific date, which drove him to take drastic actions that would haunt her for the rest of her life. He discloses that Yoonji is the direct consequence of what he did to her mother. As Haru and Sung-hyun continue their banter, Sung-hyun tells him that things wouldn't be this complicated if it weren't for his grandfather, his father, himself, and even Yoonji, and this is the reason they find themselves in this situation. Haru, clearly agitated, questions Sung-hyun's right to speak out when he himself is in the wrong, asserting that he cannot be with Yoonji. However, Sung-hyun calmly counters, stating that it's Haru who has no right. He explains that as soon as he discovered the connection between Reamer and the Innocents, he tried his best to take responsibility. He even went on to explain himself and apologize to Yoonji. Furthermore, he made efforts to find a solution, while Haru seemed to be only concerned about himself without making an effort to understand Yoonji better. Sung-hyun points out that if Yoonji had believed she could rely on Haru, she wouldn't have approached him, the vice chairman. However, Haru's frustration builds, and he suggests that Luna may have chosen his cousin because of his wealth and his position as the vice chairman of the Innocents. Sung-hyun disagrees with this notion and provides a compelling explanation. He reveals that when Luna confided in him about her pregnancy, he made it clear that he didn't care if the child was not his. With this revelation, he challenges Haru, asking whether he would be prepared to take responsibility for Luna if the child turned out not to be his. This question leaves Haru completely speechless, and Sung-hyun, having said his piece, gets up and departs. As Sung-hyun heads home, he continues to reflect on everything that has transpired. His suspicions about his uncle's involvement in his grandfather's demise have proven to be accurate. He can't help but lament the fact that the pen broke, as it would have provided clear evidence. Now, with the trial only 2 days away, he ponders his next move. Meanwhile, Moon Sung-wook maintains his grip on Yoonji's neck, steadily revealing his secrets. He mentions that when they initially met, Yoonji's eyes were brown. Furthermore, he speculates that Yoonji's mother altered her appearance by giving her blue contact lenses in an attempt to deceive him. Gradually, he eases his hold on her neck and proposes an alternative. He suggests that she join forces with him instead of Sung-hyun, enabling her to reclaim her position as the chairman's daughter. He emphasizes that she would be the daughter of the Innocents, as opposed to Reamer. Inwardly, Yoonji reflects on her chaotic life. She acknowledges that she wasted her time and energy working as a girlfriend for hire, deriving satisfaction from a mere 20,000 won tip. Her survival depended on Sung-hyun's affection and kindness. Given this, she inquires if he can guarantee a return to her former life if she agrees to work with him. Moon Sung-wook readily agrees, citing her as his daughter. Unexpectedly, Yoonji then criticizes his inflated ego before launching an attack. She points out that when they initially met, she wore colored contact lenses, which may have hindered his perception of her eye color. She challenges him to observe her eyes closely and in doing so, reveals a startling revelation: her father is not Korean, and she was conceived using a donor. Moreover, her mother had preferred her to grow up fatherless rather than marry someone like Moon Sung-wook. Triggered by this revelation, he raises the knife with the intent to strike her. However, Sung-hyun intervenes at that very moment, ending up getting pierced by the knife. Sung-hyun is immediately rushed to the hospital, with Luna crying by his side. Her worry intensifies when the doctor informs her that she cannot be allowed in the room, but that doesn't stop her from hoping for the best for Sung-hyun. As she waits anxiously, a memory resurfaces. It's a recollection of Moon Sung-hyun at the tender age of 11. His father was a constant source of fear and anger in their home, subjecting his mother to abuse. Nevertheless, his mother always covered up for the abusive behavior, claiming it was a mistake that grown-ups occasionally make. She'd often reassure Sung-hyun not to misinterpret his father's actions, because he loves them both. However, even as a child, Sung-hyun knew that his mother was lying to shield him from the painful truth. He believed he was the only one who could protect her. Then, that fateful day comes rushing back. Sung-hyun's father, fueled by rage, left the family in a state of terror as he threatened his wife. Little Sung-hyun, with tears streaming down his face, pleaded with his father to put the knife down. His desperate pleas fell on deaf ears as his father carelessly drove the knife through his wife. Sung-hyun immediately awakens from that terrible nightmare at the hospital, his heart racing as he tries to make sense of it all. Luna, sitting by his bedside, burst into tears of joy upon seeing him finally awake. Anxious to understand the events leading up to his hospitalization, he asks Luna about what transpired and the whereabouts of his uncle. Luna, her voice shaking with relief, explains that his uncle must have been startled when he accidentally stabbed Sung-hyun instead of her, prompting him to make a hasty escape. She then reveals that she quickly called for emergency assistance, which is how he ended up in the hospital. Luna further details that doctors had successfully stitched up his wound, but he had remained in a coma for 2 agonizing days due to the significant blood loss. Sung-hyun, filled with guilt for the shock he caused her, apologizes, but Luna reassures him, urging him to focus on his recovery. Sung-hyun inquires about the threatening presence of his uncle in his house, waving a knife at Luna. Just then, a voice calls out his name, introducing herself as Kim Ji-yeon, the former CEO of Reamer and Luna's mother. She informs Sung-hyun that she is willing to stand trial for his case and has discovered evidence that could potentially clear his name. In the next scene, it's the day of the hearing. As the courtroom session begins, the judge inquires whether Sung-hyun has arrived, but he's still at the hospital, recovering. Meanwhile, Sung-hyun's uncle conceals his inner satisfaction about his absence, plotting to confront Sung-hyun and Luna once the trial is postponed. Just as the judge is about to adjourn the trial due to the defendant's absence, he enters the courtroom, apologizing for his lateness. His uncle's countenance darkens noticeably, and he can't help but wonder what Kim Ji-yeon is doing there. Meanwhile, Luna finds herself at the clinic, eagerly contemplating the trial's progress with Sung-hyun. Lost in her thoughts, the doctors eventually call her in for her appointment, prompting her to refocus on her immediate concerns. Back in the courtroom, a man steps forward and introduces himself as the defendant's attorney. He diligently begins to present his case, asserting that they possess evidence that debunks the accusation that Sung-hyun threatened and caused the demise of his grandfather. Urging the courtroom's attention toward the front screen, he unveils a video from the fateful day when Sung-hyun lost his father. Shockingly, it is revealed that Sung-hyun's uncle intentionally delayed calling an ambulance that day, heartlessly observing the father and son suffering while engrossed in a book. Upon hearing this revelation, the courtroom erupts in murmurs and whispers, with questions and doubts filled. Sung-hyun's lawyer seized the moment, further explaining that not only did they locate the book where the crucial CCTV footage was recorded, but they also discovered Moon Sung-wook's fingerprints on specific pages, ranging from page 20 to 60. Moon Sung-wook is noticeably present in the courtroom. The attorney proceeds to submit both the CCTV footage and the book as compelling pieces of evidence. In defense, Sung-hyun's uncle forcefully declares that his nephew's father had already passed away by the time he arrived on that fateful day. In response, the judge intervenes, cautioning Sung-hyun that the presented evidence does not seem directly related to the ongoing trial. The judge inquires if Sung-hyun possesses any additional evidence, to which he offers a disheartening negative response. Suddenly, a hushed yet determined voice rises within the courtroom, revealing itself as Haru. His unexpected presence sends shockwaves through the courtroom, but regardless, he expresses his intention to submit conclusive evidence regarding the chairman of the Innocence's passing. Haru presents the USB and reveals that it contains crucial evidence. Upon listening to the recording stored on the USB, we uncover a significant turn of events that occurred during the vice chairman's inauguration day. Moon Sung-wook, in this recording, seeks a meeting with the chairman and raises the burning question of whether the chairman intends to pass on the company's leadership to Sung-hyun. The chairman's response surprises us, as he offers a subsidiary company to his son instead. Moon Sung-wook's frustration and determination become evident as he insists that he has dedicated too much to the company to allow Sung-hyun to hinder his progress. In a shocking twist, Moon Sung-wook discloses that he has engaged a contractor, threateningly hinting that the contractor is said to take action either at the vice chairman's office or during the vice chairman's inauguration. He proceeds to issue an ultimatum to the chairman, posing a chilling choice: the chairman's own long life or the promising future of his young grandson. The chairman, angered, inquires whether Moon Sung-wook's greed surpasses his loyalty to his parents and his brother. In a cold-hearted and bold move, Moon Sung-wook commands his father to jump from the rooftop, insisting that only such a sacrifice will ensure Sung-hyun's safety. He gives the elderly man a mere 30 minutes and dictates that this is the content of his will. After a tense altercation, he makes it clear that Sung-hyun's fate now rests in his hands. A collective murmur of disbelief and shock fills the courtroom as they absorb the contents of this recording. The judge, acknowledging the undeniable relevance of this evidence to the case, decides to admit the recording as a crucial piece of evidence. Immediately, Moon Sung-wook turns to his son Haru, fiercely attacking him for bringing the USB as evidence. He showers him with curses and accusations, scolding him for providing evidence against his own father. All the while, Sung-hyun stands there, stunned and shocked by the chilling revelations from the recording. He can hardly fathom the truth that his own uncle was responsible for the demise of both his father and grandfather. It's a painful realization that he had desperately sought his uncle's approval without knowing the true nature of the man he idolized. Fortunately, the table turns in an instant. Sung-hyun is declared innocent in the case of the chairman of the Innocence's demise, and he is granted a retrial for the harsh penalty he had unjustly received in connection to his father's assassination. On the other hand, Moon Sung-wook finds himself behind bars, desperately seeking a means to plead his innocence. His lawyer informs him that the evidence against him is greatly conclusive, making it an impossible task to prove his innocence, let alone reduce his sentence. To make matters worse, he faces an additional charge related to housebreaking and inflicting bodily harm, further complicating his legal predicament. Presently, Luna informs Sung-hyun that she has reported his uncle for housebreaking and bodily harm because she can't simply allow him to get away with it. She tells him how she feared for his safety. He applauds her for taking this action, stating that his uncle needs to be held accountable for everything he has done. Curious about the additional conclusive evidence he mentioned, she asks him to explain, and he proceeds to provide details about his grandfather's pen, which was used as a recording device. Sung-hyun then reminds her of something she wanted to share with him. Luna reaches into her bag and passes him an envelope containing the results of the scan she had done to confirm her pregnancy. With a worried expression, she informs him that the results are out and poses the delicate question, should I terminate it? She lists one reason after another why she's contemplating that. Yet, in her concerns and fears, Sung-hyun has only one question, is she unsure about keeping the baby because she's uncertain about its paternity? She nods, confirming his suspicion, and confesses that fear is also a major player in her decision-making process. She candidly admits that she can barely take care of herself, let alone a baby. However, Sung-hyun seems unshaken by this revelation, his determination to become a father overshadowing any opinion. In a moment of sincerity, he implores her to be brutally honest about her desires for the baby, disregarding his own. In this moment, memories of a conversation with the doctor resurface, a plea for her guardian to accompany her next time, and the shocking reality of her pregnancy hits her like a ton of bricks. However, regret for past decisions, especially involving Haru, weigh heavily on her mind. Initially fueled by the thought of any further encounters with Sung-hyun, her perspective now shifts, filled with worries about potential hardships her child might face, just like her own experiences of being bullied for having blue eyes and lacking a father figure. To his earnest question about her intentions for the baby, she responds with a heavy heart, asserting that she lacks the right to be a mother. She admits that, from the start, happiness was not her immediate emotion, instead, it was the overwhelming concern about her own future. Sung-hyun, however, attempts to reassure her, insisting that anyone in her situation would have similar fears and doubts. Her response is a declaration of self-blame, labeling herself a coward for initially wanting to deny the pregnancy. She confesses her misguided hope that if she neglected her condition, she might lose it. But despite her neglect and unhealthy choices, the baby not only endured but thrived. Emotions surge, and she breaks down, collapsing into Sung-hyun's comforting embrace. He consoles her, recognizing the fear in facing the hospital visit alone. With tenderness, he suggests they navigate this journey together, acknowledging that there's much for him to learn before entering into the role of a father. Nevertheless, Luna maintains her skepticism, convinced that he'll eventually regret this choice. He, however, reassures her with a newfound maturity, asserting that if the baby is hers, it's automatically his responsibility, too. He earnestly promises to step up his game. It's heartening to witness the transformation of this once arrogant young man into someone so sweet and responsible. The scene then cuts to the bedroom, where he probes if she's feeling better now, and she nods in affirmation, yet to his surprise, he insists on scolding her. Despite her claims of being okay, he notices her persistent worries and decides in a light-hearted moment, he begins to tickle her, and the atmosphere drifts. A bit later Sung-hyun has dozed off into a deep slumber and Luna finds herself settling down beside him. Her gaze lingers on his peaceful face as she contemplates the recent trial and his hectic schedule, acknowledging that he deserves all the rest he can get. So, she decides to let him be, silently watching over him with a mix of gratitude and concern. As Luna remains fixated on Sunghyun's sleeping form, her thoughts drift back to the harrowing days after he was stabbed, confined to the hospital bed. Anxiety gnawed at her as she wondered why he hadn't awakened despite a successful surgery. The memory of those moments is etched in her mind, and she can't help but recall the fear that he might not wake up again. In the hushed moments, by his bedside, Luna's contemplation is interrupted by persistent calls from Haru. Puzzled, she debates whether the calls are related to the upcoming contest exhibit, but deems it an inappropriate time to discuss such matters, given her undisclosed pregnancy and Sunghyun's fragile state. Haru's persistence, however, leads her to finally answer the call. To her surprise, he shares that he has completed the webtoon and seeks her input before submission, an understandable request given their collaborative effort. Juggling concerns for Sunghyun and her professional commitments, Luna agrees to review the webtoon. As they converse, she discloses the ongoing situation at the hospital, explaining her hesitance to meet. Haru, unaware of the gravity of Sunghyun's condition, inquires about her friend's identity. Luna, taken aback, confirms that it is Sunghyun, prompting Haru to rush to the hospital immediately. Upon his arrival, Haru is confronted with the sight of his cousin lying motionless. The revelation of Sunghyun's sacrifice and the severity of his condition shocks him. Luna, torn between secrecy and Haru's concern, decides to share minimal details. Sensing the need for privacy, Haru suggests they move the conversation outside. In the hospital courtyard, Luna probes into their connection, questioning if they were schoolmates, but Haru, intent on keeping their familial ties hidden, makes up some story and out the depth of their bond. He talks about how he was always seen within his family, consistently labeled as the problem child who couldn't fend for himself. To everyone else, he seemed like a pathetic kid. The only shining light in those dark times was Sunghyun, the one person who took his side. Without Sunghyun's support, he doubts he would have not only survived those tough moments, but also evolved into the accomplished webtoon artist he is today. As if that is not enough, he discloses that Sunghyun was with him on the night of the accident. Luna, upon hearing this revelation, mentally rewinds to that fateful day, and curiosity sparks in her eyes. Luna quizzes Haru, her voice carrying a mix of surprise and suspicion, asking if he was the mysterious benefactor who provided Sunghyun with the crucial evidence. Haru nods, recounting how his grandfather possessed a pen capable of recording audio. He dismisses its potential usefulness now, but moves on to confirm a hearsay from his cousin about Luna's pregnancy. Casually, he probes further, wondering if she kept the news under wraps because of uncertainty about the father. Right on cue, Haru drops a question, forcing Luna to confront the potential fallout. What if Sunghyun doesn't wake up or loses the trial? With a criminal record, Haru predicts he could lose everything and spend decades behind bars. In a swift pivot, he proposes an alternative reality where Luna stays with him. Haru outlines a vision of publishing a successful webtoon together, possibly securing a position in the family company, and creating a comfortable life for the three of them. However, Luna stands firm in her decision to be by Sunghyun's side. She expresses regret for not disclosing her condition earlier, explaining that after her heated argument with Sunghyun that night, she profoundly regretted it. Now, she is determined not to repeat past mistakes and vows to stand by him, just as he did for her. Despite the gloomy atmosphere, Haru gracefully acknowledges her decision and shifts gears, steering the conversation back to business and assures her that he will send the completed webtoon via email. As he strolls away, he throws out a spontaneous request for one last hug, and surprisingly, she indulges him. But the story doesn't wrap up there. No, he takes it a step further, asking for an additional favor. He implores her not to attend the trial, expressing a desire to shield her from the grim and unpleasant proceedings. Amidst this vulnerable moment, he lays bare his emotions, admitting to having a considerable fondness for her. Despite his confession, she remains apologetic, lamenting that she has let him down. Back to the current moment, Sunghyun slowly opens his eyes with a gentle request for Yoonji to cast aside any worries for the day. She sits there, gaze fixed on him in astonishment, and finally, she offers a simple greeting in response. In the following scene at the Yuhasung Neuropsychiatry Clinic, Luna pays a visit to her doctor. Dr. Yu remarks on the significant events that have unfolded in Luna's life, casually mentioning that she's now expecting. Luna swiftly interjects, expressing that this revelation is precisely why she's contemplating discontinuing her medications. Dr. Yu acknowledges the delicate situation, conceding that while being cautious with medications during pregnancy is crucial, an abrupt cessation might pose unforeseen risks. He underscores the notion that confronting the truth involves navigating through challenges. Luna, however, remains resolute in her decision, asserting her desire to prioritize her baby's well-being. In response, Dr. Yu, after a thoughtful pause, grants his approval. He confirms that she can proceed with her chosen course of action. Grateful for his understanding, she expresses her thanks and gracefully exits the doctor's office. In the meantime, Moon Sung-wook finds himself facing a 30-year prison sentence. In a twist of fate, Sung-hyun becomes the chairman at the Innocents. Yoonji, or Luna as she is not called, now resides with Sung-hyun in the Seagrill apartments. However, a significant change has occurred in her life. She has officially debuted as a professional writer. In the next scene, the couple shares a tender moment as Sung-hyun presents Luna with one of her literary works, now adorned with a participation award. To her delight, Luna discovers that she has not only received an award but has also been acknowledged as a writer. The satisfaction of having her life come together is palpable. Overjoyed, she proposes celebrating their success with a beef barbecue, insisting that she foots the bill. But just when Luna's riding high on happiness, she finds out that her ex, Kang Tae-hoon, won the grand prize for the award. This gets her thinking, is he moving into webtoons too? Even though she's a bit taken aback, she's still grateful for her award and feels bad about hurting Haru unintentionally. They go ahead with their dinner plans, but Sung-hyun seems distracted, staring off into space instead of enjoying his meal. Luna wonders if he's not liking the food, but he assures her that's not the case. Then, out of the blue, he suggests they go for a walk after dinner. While they're walking, Luna opens up to Sung-hyun. She tells him that she used to think living in the Seagrill apartments, especially on the 130th floor, would make her happy and symbolize the peak of her life. But holding his hand, she admits that she's realized true happiness isn't about where you live, but who you're with. In a sweet moment, she tells him everything looks beautiful when she's with him. To her surprise, he feels the same way. And then, to top it all off, Sung-hyun pulls out an engagement ring and proposes. Even though he knows she might think it's not necessary, he wants to do everything the right way before they become husband and wife, and eventually parents. Luna, completely overjoyed, accepts his proposal with a hug, excited for their future together. After Luna's life takes this exciting turn, Sung-hyun steps into the spotlight at a conference, owning up to the mess the Innocents has caused in society. Back at home, Luna watches as Sung-hyun sincerely admits to the mistakes his organization has made. In a bombshell moment, Sung-hyun confesses that the Innocents manipulated studies and broadcasts to ruin Reamer's reputation. After Reamer was taken down, they shamelessly used their business strategies to grow. The room is filled with shocked gasps, but Sung-hyun stays strong, ready to face the consequences and make things right. In a surprising move, Sung-hyun compensates Luna's mother, the former president of Reamer, by granting her a substantial portion of the Innocents' business and personal rights. Luna, now having a drink with her mother, confronts feelings of betrayal upon learning about her mother's collaboration with Sung-hyun through the news. Her mother, seemingly shocked, reveals that her son-in-law had informed his soon-to-be wife about the impending changes, but Luna remains skeptical. Recalling a vague mention of significant changes at the company, Luna notices her mother referring to Sung-hyun as her son-in-law. The realization hits her that wedding planning can keep her so busy. In a heart-to-heart with her mother, Luna gains a deeper understanding of her perspective. As they share a tender moment, Luna reveals Sung-hyun's uncle, the former vice president of the Innocents, suggesting a potential familial connection. However, her mom tries to dissuade Luna with a reminder of her eye color whenever she feels the need to inquire about her father. Meanwhile, Luna's mother, fresh off a call with her son, shares the excitement of not wanting to miss Luna's impending wedding for anything. Time passes, and the much-anticipated wedding day finally arrives, yet the surreal nature of the moment clings to Luna like a dream. It's almost unbelievable. Is she actually getting married? The question casts a shadow of doubt over her entitlement to happiness. Just then she recalls a recent conversation with Haru. He had offered his warm congratulations on her impending marriage, coupled with a pledge to excel in his artistic pursuits. Just as the ceremony is about to begin, there's a flashback to that heartfelt exchange with Haru. The anticipation builds, and in walks Sung-hyun, her soon-to-be husband, ready to escort her down the aisle. In the midst of this tender moment, Luna's brother can't help but find it somewhat shocking that the bride and groom are entering without the customary presence of a host or officiant. Meanwhile, their mother observes, tears welling in her eyes as she watches her precious daughter take steps toward a new chapter. Amidst the ceremonial proceedings, the bride and groom can't hold back their feelings anymore and share a heart-stopping kiss. Just like that, it's official, they're husband and wife. On the flip side, there's Dr. Yu, realizing that being a doctor means dealing with a lot of ups and downs. He decides to take a step back, promising to silently cheer on Luna from the sidelines, as she steps into her new life of joy. Fast forward a year, and Luna's on the edge of her seat, waiting for a phone call that's about to change everything. Meanwhile, her hubby Sung-hyun's on daddy duty, trying to put their cute little bundle of joy, Yui, to sleep. The doorbell rings, interrupting their regular day. Luna rushes to get the package they've been waiting for. With baby Yui sleeping soundly, Luna thinks it's the perfect time to check out what's inside. But, just as they're about to open the package, Yui wakes up and starts crying her little heart out. Amidst all the chaos, they manage to open the package, and guess what they find? A paternity test confirming Sung-hyun is indeed Yui's biological dad. In the end, Luna was able to leave her not-so-great past behind, including her unhealthy habits, a toxic ex, and a lifestyle that was once luxurious but had fallen apart. She found real love with Sung-hyun, who went from being a client to her partner for life. Despite all the twists and turns, Luna managed to navigate through the maze of her past and find true happiness. With this, our story finally comes to an end. If you liked it, leave a comment below. Also, like, share, and subscribe for other maxing recaps. Until next time, ciao.